Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my Karen guidance counselor told me that I wasn't college material. Years later, I pretended not to know her. I know it doesn't sound much like revenge, but it was oh so sweet, let me tell you. Back in high school, I struggled hard. I had a stepdad who adopted me and then ignored me my whole life, and a mom who was wrapped up in making his life perfect. Yeah, he was what some might call a textbook narcissist, with my mom as his flying monkey. It's from Wizard of Oz. Anyway, school was a difficult time for me, and I had a lot of anxiety and a hard time focusing. I attended all of my classes, and I was always doing very well on my assignments, but I had trouble completing them. My guidance counselor was the same all throughout high school, and every year would start with a meeting with her, and I would explain I needed more help because I was struggling to focus. She brushed me off every time, stating that I obviously wasn't trying hard enough because I had no excuse, since my stepdad, my adopted dad, was, wait for it, a social worker for the school board and personal friend of hers. Yeah, it was awful. At the end of high school, we had our obligatory meeting about what colleges and universities or trade schools to apply for. I told her I was interested in psychology and I would like to be a counselor or to teach psychology. The woman scoffed, literally scoffed at me. She said, and I quote, "Please do not apply to university. It would be a huge disappointment for you. You are not university material, and you may be better with a community college or even certificate in administration." Now let me say, there's nothing wrong with going to community college or getting a certificate in something, nothing at all. But this woman's words would haunt me my whole life. I wanted to pursue something I was very interested in, and she essentially told me I wasn't smart enough or capable enough to do it. Fast forward to my late 20s. I worked at a variety of small jobs here and there and became very depressed. I finally decided one day, forget this, I'm applying for university. Well, I got in and I graduated with honors. So I went to teacher's college for another bachelor degree. Again, graduated with honors, and about 5 years ago, I finally finished my master's in behavioral psychology. 2 years ago, stepdad passed, and who's at the visitation? My old guidance counselor. She came right over and started talking to me immediately like she knew me, like we were old friends. I cut her off and said, "I'm so sorry, you must be confusing me with someone else." She looked shocked and said, "I was your guidance counselor for 4 years." And I just shook my head and gave the best blank stare that I could, shrugged and said, "Sorry, I honestly don't remember you." When I left, she looked a bit confused and disappointed. I think she had hoped for me to have all these good memories of her, how helpful she was to me as a teen. But nope, I wanted her to feel that she was nothing to me, had zero effect. Even though she did affect me, I wasn't going to let her know that. I felt pretty good about that. Edit. To anyone wondering, I now teach psychology to future counselors, so I'm doing what I originally wanted, and that made this so much sweeter. Edit. My mom had run into her a few times at the grocery store before this and has bragged about my accomplishments, so I didn't have to tell her about them. She knew I was successful. Since she already knew, I pretended she was nobody to me, to ensure she understood she contributed nothing. Also, to those say that she helped me in the end, and that she was right, no, I asked her to help me for 4 years and I got nothing. She laughed at my dreams and my goals. She did not do her job, she failed as a guidance counselor, and frankly, also as a decent human being. It makes me sad to see how many people were also treated the way that I was. I'd love to expand on my story more, but I wouldn't know how to do that. I'm just glad this post was able to inspire some of you to achieve your dreams, in spite of the grown-ups who said you couldn't. To the haters who still want to argue, but she helped you out. No, I motivated and helped myself. How dare you try to diminish my hard work by saying this woman who failed me was helping? Shame on you for saying that. Bullies aren't motivational tools, they're just tools. Am I the jerk for no longer babysitting for my sister? Basically, I, 39 female, was helping my sister Claire, who's 38, with her kids, who are 9 and 5, because she's going through a nasty split with their dad. They go to the same school as my kid, who's 6, and I work flexible hours and from home, so it was easy to pick the kids up and watch them for a few hours. I was also paid for my time, as was my husband who also helped, but I quit after Claire accused my kid of stealing. She said with no evidence or anything that since her daughter's favorite doll was missing, it was obvious my daughter had stolen it since it was last seen at my house. I asked my daughter and she said no, and I believed her. She said she saw my niece leave with it and I believed her. I even searched my whole house and I couldn't find it. I told my sister all of this and she said that my daughter is a liar and a thief and that I'm enabling her and she expects me to pay for a new doll. I was so angry and incensed that she was being so nasty and horrible that I just said to her, "My daughter is no liar or a thief, and you know what? I'm done. Find someone else to babysit because it certainly won't be me," and I hung up. I got 5 missed calls from Claire before I blocked her. She sent panicked messages and tried calling my husband, but he blocked her too. We've learned from my parents that Claire is panicking because she really needs help with the kids, and I'm the only one with sort of flexible routine to do so. She also said that she has found her daughter's doll and said that it's okay now, but not once has she offered any sort of apology for what she said about my kid. My parents think that I'm doing her over by not helping her and that she made an honest mistake and it just stressed her out and everything is due to her marriage split. They've also said that I should perhaps take the higher ground and move on from this and don't seem to understand that my kid was accused of something she didn't do. I see it as, I don't care if she's crappy to me, but definitely if it's about my kid and she hasn't once said sorry for accusing my 6-year-old of being a thief, she disrespected my kid and no amount of bad situation or stress is preventing her from saying sorry and smoothing things over. I should also add, my niece never said my daughter stole her doll. She just said something along the lines of, "Mommy, I can't find my doll," and never said any other context to that. So my sister just assumed it meant my daughter stole it rather than believing it could have just been somewhere in her house. I quit babysitting because she was rude, nasty, and bitter, and is expecting things to go back to normal just because she found the doll. She isn't admitting she messed up, and I would be happy to babysit again, but only if she sincerely apologized. But she isn't, so here we are. Not the jerk. Your sister has yet to apologize for calling your daughter a liar and a thief without evidence, not even after she found the doll. Therefore, evidence of your daughter's innocence. You should take the higher ground and move on? Why do people always put pressure to be the bigger man or bigger woman on the wronged party? Not the jerk. She didn't ask if maybe your daughter took the doll by mistake. She went straight to, "She's a thief and a liar." And no apology? Man, if she had apologized and got your daughter a little gift, it may have been salvageable. As it is, don't babysit anymore. Stress and all that is no excuse for this type of behavior towards your family. Am I the jerk for assuming our kids will take my last name? Plus updates. I'm 29, female. My husband is 29, male, and I'm pregnant. We're happy about it, but it's all happened so fast, so we didn't discuss details before. Today, while we were fantasizing about our future, I kind of wistfully said the full name of our baby. Gender-neutral first name we chose and my last name. He was upset and asked why I assumed they would take my name. I said it was because I thought he didn't care about his last name, whereas my last name is very important to me. Context: I never changed my last name when we got married because in my culture this is uncommon, and my name also has very heavy cultural and historic significance. I'm extremely proud of it, and I'm also very close with my extended family. My husband has no relationship with his family as his parents abandoned him to his uncle who mistreated him for years until he moved in with me. When we were getting married, he wanted to change his last name to mine because he feels like my family is his real family, which I was okay with, but eventually we decided he doesn't need to go through the hassle since he's a part of our family regardless. He's never expressed any type of interest in his heritage, which is Irish, and even when I suggested we go visit Ireland, he wasn't interested. But now he said that people will think the kid is not his, and that it's disrespectful to have kids not take the father's last name. I was confused because he's never expressed any such sentiment before. I told him my last name is non-negotiable, so we can hyphenate it. He was resistant since both our last names are clunky and long, but eventually he said only if his name comes first. I got really annoyed at his implication that there's something wrong with taking the mom's last name, so maybe I was a little petty and I said, "Suits me. That way people will think your name is just a middle name and mine is their last name." He told me I was being a jerk and left the house. It's been a couple of hours, and he's responding to my texts with one-word responses. Edit: I'm seeing some misunderstanding about why he never changed his last name to mine. I thought it was a good idea, and so he was doing research on the process, but ended up complaining to me that the process seemed like a big hassle. After which I told him that my family loves him regardless of what his last name is, so he decided to not go through with it. Right now, we decided to discuss this whole thing in the morning after we get some sleep, and I'll try to offer some of the suggestions people made in the replies. Thank you for the responses. It really helped put some things into perspective for me. Update: after my husband came home, we decided to talk in the morning as he was tired and still a little upset. Next morning, he was really trying to push the topic aside and said he didn't care what name we chose anymore. He just didn't want to keep talking about it. I didn't think that was a good idea, but I was worried he'd get angry if I pushed it, so I asked him if we could just cuddle for a while. I brought it up again by apologizing for my comment that I made about the hyphenated name. He said he didn't want to hyphenate our names anyway. We talked for a while about a lot, like my family, culture, and his family, etc. But basically, he felt like he was the odd one out. I reminded him again how much my family, especially my parents and brother, love him and treat him like a son and a brother. They really do treat him like the baby of the family because that's how they always treated me as the youngest. My extended family loves him as well. He said he felt like he was still stuck with his crappy family even though he hasn't talked to any of them in years, and if our baby has his name, it would be like he was connected with the baby through that name and not his family. I was dreading asking him this, but based on comments on my other post, I decided to ask anyway. I asked him if he thinks he would like taking my last name, so he didn't have to share his last name with them anymore. He said that he was too embarrassed to suggest this again to my family because he felt like it would look badly that he keeps changing his mind on the topic, like he didn't respect this decision or my family's name. I convinced him that they wouldn't feel that way and that I would help him with every step of the name-changing process if he wants it. We ran it by my parents to prove to him that they were okay with it, and they were super supportive. He seems really happy about the decision and even excited while we were gathering all the info to make sure it's a smooth transition. I'm also planning to have some more detailed discussions with him about other things we never really discussed specifics of, so we don't catch each other by surprise again. Thank you again, everyone, for the perspectives and the suggestions. Am I the jerk for buying first-class tickets and leaving my in-laws to rot in coach? Okay, so here's the story. I'm a big guy. In fact, I was an NCAA Division II tight end. For non-Americans, think of the size of rugby players. For non-sports people, I'm a big dude. Not to mention my poor knees are shot and I have a bad lower back. Then factor in that I travel by plane often for work. My job reimburses for flights, but they only pay for a basic seat. Any upgrades come out of pocket. Thankfully, I make a decent enough living that most of the time I spring for an upgrade to economy comfort or even business class. If I have enough points or the flight is cheap enough, I spring for first class, but it's only if it's a longer haul flight. If it's a regional flight, I just suck it up, save the cash, and sit in economy. Okay, so here's the story. My in-laws invited me and my girlfriend, Diana, on a trip. We paid our own way, FYI. The trip would be 7 hours, so I told my girlfriend and in-laws that I paid for an upgrade to business class. They were cool with it, but in reality, I had something else cooking. Diana has never flown first class, and as a special surprise for her, I upgraded our seats to first class and would tell her at the airport. So for all the reasons I listed above, and for Diana, I got us upgraded to first. I was so excited to see her reaction, I could barely hold it in. So we get to the airport, and when the first class passengers are called, I looked at my girlfriend and told her, "Let's go." She said they didn't call our cabin yet, and I told her to look closer at her boarding pass. She looks and she's stunned. Father-in-law just laughs and shakes his head. Mother-in-law is stunned but doesn't look happy. Long story short, we had a ball in first class. She loved it and thanked me again and again. She only said to tell her in advance next time so that she can dress more bougie. We get off the plane and mother-in-law is angry at me. She said, "How could you leave father-in-law and I to rot in coach while you live it up in first?" To be fair, father-in-law didn't really care. He said he slept the whole way. He then told mother-in-law that he'd have left us too if he'd had the money. Mother-in-law said we should all go first class or not at all, that it isn't really fair or a good look to have two parties be in different classes like that. I said we were originally in business. She said there's a world of difference between business and first class. She said I could have at least sprung for economy comfort or business class for everyone, rather than being selfish. I talked with Diana afterward, and she said that while she enjoyed the surprise, she said that maybe I should have saved it for a private trip for the two of us, rather than with her parents. I still don't think it's a big deal, but I've been wrong in the past. So, am I the jerk? P.S. Mother-in-law is usually a nice person. I just think that this set her off. Not the jerk. You are all paying your own way. You don't have to travel as a herd. Mother-in-law is just jealous. She could have paid to be in first class, but she thinks that she's entitled to have you pay for it. Nope, nope, nope. Not gonna happen. Not the jerk. Your mother-in-law sounds bitter and entitled. Also, it's weird that she claims it isn't a good look to have separate classes. What? If everyone was already paying their own way, I'm really not sure of the problem. I'm tall for a girl, 5'9", and I don't want to sit in economy. My legs are insanely long, and I'm just not doing it. I don't blame you for sitting elsewhere. You're the jerk. That's like going on a family vacation, but you stay in a 5-star hotel while your parents stay in a Motel 6, or ordering steak for yourself while getting cup noodles for the in-laws. Your girlfriend is right that this would have been more appropriate to do if it was just a trip for the two of you, instead of with the in-laws. Now your girlfriend can't even gush about the fun experience without reminding her parents that they were purposely left out. You're the jerk. I'm gonna go against the grain. This was a group trip, and then you secretly organized something to separate the group. That's unkind and disrespectful to the others in the group. Am I the jerk for calling my boyfriend a lying jerk for not buying me the perfume I wanted for my birthday? I, 21 female, am really into beauty, makeup, skincare, perfume, etc., and I collect perfumes. There's one perfume I've been wanting for quite some time now, but it's been way out of my budget. I'm a college student working a part-time job at the movie theater, which pays about $13 an hour, and I have other priorities to pay for, so it's taken a while for me to save up. I'd finally saved up the amount I needed, and I was planning on buying myself the perfume as a birthday gift. My birthday was 2 days ago. I told my boyfriend, who's 20, and he told me to go spend my money on something else and he'd buy me the perfume instead. I told him he didn't have to, considering it's expensive, but he insisted. A few days before my birthday, I asked him if he was sure about buying it and told him again that I had no problem buying it myself. He told me not to worry about it and said he had already bought and wrapped it. I thanked him and figured since he had already bought it that I could spend my money on something else. I took my best friend and my younger sister out to a nice restaurant and to the movies after. I wasted more than half the money I'd saved up, but obviously didn't think anything of it. So on my birthday, my boyfriend gave me my gift, and it was a body spray and a bath bomb. I asked him what happened to the perfume, and he told me it was a lot more expensive than he'd expected and was way out of his budget. I got mad at him and asked him why he lied to me and told me to waste my money on something else when he could have easily told me he couldn't afford it and I'd have bought it myself. He called me a spoiled brat and said I was expecting too much from him. I called him a lying jerk and left after that. I got a few texts from him and his friends calling me names and saying I'm using him for money. I also got a text from his mom, who I had a great relationship with, calling me childish for throwing temper tantrums when I don't get my way. I honestly don't see how I'm in the wrong here, but I'm not the type of person to not say sorry if I am. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He lied to you and promised something, and then he didn't follow through with it. You gave him multiple chances to change his mind. He promised you it was already wrapped and got your hopes up, caused you to spend the money you had intentionally saved up for this item, and then acted like it was your fault you were disappointed and upset. Also, the way he responded to all of this, leave him. Not the jerk. He said he would get you what you wanted and then substituted something else. And you're the spoiled brat? Dump him. Save the money again and buy yourself some for Christmas. Happy belated birthday, hugs, and good luck. You're the jerk. See, this is why I traveled abroad and married a woman from a third world country. The sheer entitlement to flip out over not getting the perfume you wanted your boyfriend to buy you, my wife wouldn't act like this in 1,000 years. Sometimes people have such privileged lives that they purposely seek out silly things to be upset over. And all these idiots telling you to leave him. Honestly, I hope you do. He deserves someone that won't flip out on him over not getting the perfume she wanted. And you wonder why he called you a spoiled brat. Passports, young men. The sooner you get them, the sooner you'll find a good woman to marry. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend that he can't move in with me? I, 30 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 32 male, for about 5 months now. I own my home, and I purchased it this February, and it's my second home. I made a good amount on my first home and put most of that money towards this house. I have a good career making about $80,000, and my mortgage is $1,500. My boyfriend rents a room from his friend who owns a townhouse. His friend travels a lot for work and is hardly ever home, maybe 1 week out of the month or so. My boyfriend pays $800 a month, which includes utilities. It's a nice place, and my boyfriend makes good money as well, probably around $60,000 to $70,000. So recently, his friend was thinking about selling his townhouse and just moving in with his girlfriend. He told my boyfriend this, who then came over one night and sort of sprung all of it on me and told me that he should move in with me. I was really shocked, as we've only been dating for 5 months, and I really don't think that's long enough time for me to think about letting him move in. I tried talking about it with him and told him that I needed some time to think it over. He was visibly annoyed, but let it go. So yesterday, I got a text from him stating that his friend plans to list his townhouse in October and my boyfriend needs to be out by the end of October. My boyfriend doesn't have a lease or anything, but he texted me and said that he needs to move in with me short term as that's not enough time to find an apartment. I texted him back and said we can talk that night. When he came over last night, he was ranting and begging me to let him move in, about how he didn't make enough money to get an apartment and that it would just be less stressful for him to move in with me. That if he could help pay half, then it would be good for me, etc. I shut down that idea and told him we've not been together long enough for me to want to take that step. He got upset and called me heartless, and then he left. He texted me today and apologized, but still asked that I think about it a few more days. I told my friend and coworker today about everything, and he said I'm a jerk for not letting him move in. I was really shocked, but my coworker kept going, saying that in this economy, people can't afford to live by themselves, and that 5 months is long enough to move in together. I didn't say anything, but just remained quiet. So, am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend that he can't move in with me? Not the jerk. 5 months is not long enough. If things go south, how do you get him out? Will he have a rental agreement? Then you have to follow tenant law. If not, and he receives mail at your house, then it's a whole different issue. His pushy nature and not respecting your clear boundary is concerning too. He can find a room for rent on Craigslist. He's just looking for an easy way out. Hold your ground. Not the jerk. Don't listen to your coworker and don't take relationship advice from them again. You're not obligated to take in your boyfriend, and his ranting, annoyed response speaks volumes about his character, like he can't take no for an answer. Also, if you let him in for the short term, he's not gonna leave. Am I the jerk for breaking it off with a guy who looked up where I live? I, 25 female, met a guy, 28 male, on a dating site about 4 months ago. We instantly hit it off and we had a ton in common. We talked every day until this happened. We both just got out of long-term relationships that had become super toxic, so it's kind of like we had been healing together. Our personalities mesh extremely well. We've always agreed on all of the big things like religion, politics, etc. We spend a considerable amount of time messaging back and forth every day. There's been a few small things we have disagreed on, but we always find compromises by respecting each other's opinions and working things out together. It's also relevant that he lives in a different country than I do. He seemed like a dream come true until this certain event happened. As soon as we started talking, he told me about his house and sent me several pics. I joked about what if I was a psycho and found out where he lived. Then he just flat out sent me his full address and told me he trusted me and knew he had nothing to worry about. I was kind of shocked he did that, but I did like the fact that he already trusted me this way. Now me, I'm not that trusting with people early on. It takes me much longer to trust someone with my personal info. I did tell him the city I lived in, which is one of the largest cities in my country, and about a few different places I like to go to. He started learning about my city and we talked about it sometimes. About 2 months into talking, he offered to buy me a birthday present and said he would have it sent to me if I was comfortable giving him my address. I appreciated the thought, but I just wasn't comfortable sharing my address at that time. He understood and just sent me a virtual gift card instead, which I really appreciated. Well, recently, he's been looking more into the cities here in my country. We've been discussing the idea of him moving here in the future instead of me moving there, just tossing ideas around at this point, and him getting a place near my area. He was sending me screenshots of different parts of the city from Google Maps, and one picture was in my neighborhood near a restaurant I like to go to. I told him, "That's actually in my neighborhood." Then he joked, saying, "I thought you were afraid to tell me what part of the city you're in." I told him it's okay. My city is so big, there's no way you can find out where I live. This was all done in a playful manner, not really serious. He then said, "Oh, you don't think I can figure it out? I'm really good at solving puzzles, and once I start working on one, I can't stop until I solve it." So just playing along with his game, I told him a few common stores that were in my area. I was sure he still wouldn't be able to figure it out. Well, about an hour later, he tells me, "I solved the puzzle, by the way, but you don't have anything to worry about. I would never send you anything without talking to you about it first, or do anything crazy." I thought he was just kidding again, so I told him, "There's no way you figured it out. You're just bluffing." He then says, "Well, do you ever walk down the street to store right next to me, or have your car fixed at the car place across the street from me?" That's when it hit me that he really had figured it out. I suddenly felt extremely worried. I realized that I shouldn't have given him those clues, but I really didn't think he'd actually be able to figure it out. I told him how worried I now was, and he apologized. He said if he had known how much it would have upset me, then he wouldn't have done it. He told me that he used the clues I gave him, along with a video I sent him of the view outside my building, and he was able to explore Street View on Google Maps to match it up with the buildings that are visible in the background. So that's how he did it. He was very apologetic, and I do believe he was genuine. But I just wasn't comfortable after that and told him we need a break from talking. He said he understands that he crossed a boundary and he was very sorry, but that doesn't change how creeped out I feel about him actually doing that. Am I the jerk if I tell him I don't want to continue any communication with him from now on because of this? Not the jerk. He went full creeper. You never go full creeper. Creep? Nah, OP is just an idiot. Gave him all the clues plus video outside of her building, went along with it, then acts surprised. Can't even say he went out of his way when she literally provided clues and all. Yeah, as a woman, I would be creeped out too, so not the jerk. This is extremely frightening, but you're at fault too for giving him clues and leading him on. Honestly, it sounds like he's just bad at flirting and thought you were into the topic. Probably thought of it as a challenge to prove that he's smart and good at solving puzzles. It's your choice to prioritize your safety when talking with a stranger, so yes, not the jerk if you stop communicating with them. You're the jerk. You gave him clues and played Guess Where I Live, and then he guessed where you live and you freaked out. You had the chance to not play Guess Where You Live, but instead gave more clues on purpose. Then after your freak out, he acted appropriately and apologized for accidentally crossing a boundary he didn't know you had. Also, you've been talking for 4 months. Why are you so worried he knows where you live? This isn't a stranger at this point. Am I the jerk for threatening to report my car stolen? I, 18 female, will be leaving for military boot camp soon, and the discussion of what to do with my car has recently come up. Since I'll be gone for 13 weeks, I will not need my car during that time and have agreed for my sister, Alexandra, who's 16, to use it during that time. Recently, a problem arose when I decided that when I came back from boot camp, I would take my car so that I could have it wherever I was stationed. I thought that since the car is in my name and it was given to me as a gift, not by my parents but by my grandparents, this wouldn't be a problem, or so I thought. I brought this up to my parents and they looked surprised. Apparently, behind my back, they had planned to give Alexandra the car while I was at boot camp and not return it to me once I came back. This shocked me as they had not discussed this with me. I completely own the car and it's not theirs to give away. They also already told her that the car was hers before even talking to me about it. Alexandra has been using my car to get to and from school while I await my ship-out date. It has not been a problem as I told her she could use it, and I was under the assumption that I would also be able to use it when I needed to. Since Alexandra had been told she could have the car without my permission, she assumed that she no longer had to allow me to use it. One day I needed to go to my recruiter's office to sign some paperwork, and since Alexandra's school is 33 miles from my recruiter's office, I offered to drive her to school and head to my recruiter after. She did not like this and said I should drive our mother to work and then go to the recruiter. I tried explaining that this was not the ideal situation since our mother's job is 30 miles in the opposite direction, not including the 10 miles it takes to get to Alexandra's from our house. In the end, I had to have my recruiter pick me up and take me back to his office. This is where I might be the jerk. That night, I brought this incident up and it started a fight between me and my family. I was tired of this, and I said that when I return from boot camp, they will give me my car and everything I own, which is mostly my clothes, and I'm also currently fighting Alexandra over this. My parents got mad and said I'm a child and I own nothing, not even the car. As previously stated, it's in my name. My clothes are mostly secondhand from friends, so they didn't buy them. I then explained this to them and they stopped talking. Alexandra then said the car is hers and told me to shut up. I got mad at this and said that when I come back, my car will come with me, and if I see her driving it, I'll report it as stolen. Now everyone says that I'm the jerk for threatening the cops on a teenager. So, am I the jerk for threatening to report my car stolen? Not the jerk. If the car is in your name, it's yours. There's nothing that your parents or your sister can do about that. Be sure to take the original registration papers with you so that ownership and title cannot be transferred without your consent. Crazy woman assaults me for not knowing where the coffee is. Some of these stories have reminded me of an encounter that I had about 7 years ago. I was keeping a very detailed diary at this point, so I have all the details logged, as well as all of the info that I got afterwards. A little bit of background is in order here. I grew up in a horrible household until I had finally saved up enough money and mustered up enough courage to leave. I had moved to a different town, about 2 hours by train, found myself a small apartment and a quiet job as an office assistant. I also have started therapy as soon as I settled in. With all that out of the way, let's get to the actual encounter. It was about 10 months after my move. One Saturday, after a really long crying episode, I went to the fridge to find out it was empty, and I needed to go get some groceries unless I wanted to eat crackers and pickle water. I totally wasn't in any shape to go anywhere where there might be other people, but it was my fault for postponing the trip for so long. So I just pushed myself to get dressed, brush my teeth and my hair, grab a shopping basket, and go to the nearest supermarket, which is actually the same chain I used to work at prior to this. So I walk into the shop, already shaking and anxious, and trying not to attract any attention to myself whatsoever. I grab a bit of produce, a carton of milk, several packets of ham and cheese, some yogurt. I'm almost done. Just a bag of sugar, some pasta, and ketchup, and I can bolt to the register. When someone taps me on the shoulder, and I'm immediately triggered, meaning most of my system shut down in order not to do something stupid. I slowly turn around to see an angry-looking woman that could be my mother, which is acting as another trigger, nervously tapping her foot on the floor. Can I help you? I managed to get out through the fog because my polite system stays operational at all times. About time you noticed me. I've been talking to you for about 3 minutes by now. Where is that coffee that's supposed to be on sale? It takes me a while to process what she's saying and formulate an answer. I don't know. I don't drink coffee. What do you mean you don't drink coffee? I didn't ask if you drink it, you dimwit. I asked you where I can buy it. At this point, the lady's practically screaming at me, at which point I start to back away from her, and then everything goes blank. The next thing I knew, I was staring at a hospital ceiling with a throbbing pain at the back of my head, and a nurse leaning over me, asking me how I'm feeling, to which I'm asking her what day and time it is and what happened. She frowns and says, "It's Sunday, 8 p.m., and apparently you hit that shelf pretty hard." I just let myself fall asleep again, because I seriously wasn't in any shape to think straight at that point. On Monday, my therapist came, helped me call my workplace since I definitely wasn't coming to work for a couple of days. Then 2 police officers came in to take my testimony and ask if I wanted to press charges, which has taken me back. Like me suing someone? For what? Apparently, after I started backing away from the woman, I shut down for good and started frantically pleading with her to please not hurt me, while she continued to scream and closed in on me, until I could not step back any further, at which point she got so upset, she grabbed my shirt and yanked me to her to be close to my face, to which I have instinctively reacted by pushing her away with as much force as I could. Since she didn't expect retaliation, she lost her balance, let go of my shirt, and we both went backwards. She landed on the tile floor while I hit the shelf behind me head first. The security guard and one of the employees got there at about the same time, so they saw us fight and fall. The security guy went to help the Karen, still screaming at the top of her lungs that she wants me fired for being rude, while I was curled up on the floor, hands around my head, crying and promising, "I'll be good, just please stop." Anyway, police and paramedics came. Officers scooped up Karen after seeing the camera footage, while paramedics scooped up me and got me to the hospital with a fine brain concussion. It has turned out that Karen was originally from the same town as me and saw me working at that supermarket regularly, so when she happened to be in a different town, it didn't occur to her that I'm not working in that particular store. And since she was somehow acquainted with my mother, who most likely told her how much she didn't like me, she treated me accordingly, or at least that's my conclusion. To this day, I'm not aware of any other interaction between us other than this. I ended up pressing charges after consulting my therapist. I think Karen got charged with assault, destroying property, and something I don't really remember, and apparently didn't bother writing down, and ended up in jail for 2 years since I've got a head injury and my lawyer didn't miss the opportunity to throw in my mental health state as well. I didn't set foot in that supermarket for at least a year afterwards, just bought a new shopping basket and went elsewhere. When I eventually did go back, I ran into that employee that was there during the incident, and they told me a couple details the police and doctors omitted, like the point where I was crying and begging on the floor. I've had a couple more encounters with Karens after that in various places, but by that time, I was fortunately way better off mentally and never broke down like that again in public, which is also why I'm able to write about this now, at least anonymously like this. My mother-in-law tried to stop my wife's life-saving treatments. Allow me to introduce you to my late mother-in-law. I'll call her Carol for the sake of variety. Though I've heard many stories about her, For the most part, I'll stick with things that I witnessed myself. There are enough of them. I don't think Carol ever met a new age concept that she didn't like. Her expressed goal was to synthesize all religion, science, and mysticism into a unified whole, all of it. To this end, she amassed a large collection of books and stranger objects from her travels, with a special focus on healing. Her library had volumes about vibration manipulation, curative trampolining, homeopathic color therapy, and on and on. I'm not joking or exaggerating here. Her shelves had lots of, admittedly, pretty mineral crystals, along with bottles of magic goddess essence water, evaporated away, and bogus radon protectors, powered by diagrams of geometric figures. Her favorite book, based on the number of annotations and sticky notes, was hundreds of pages of word salad about spiritual beings from the star Arcturus. That's Arcturus spelled with an H because of H-bar, Planck's constant from physics. Her pentagonal home was custom built around an energy vortex that she discovered in the coastal peaks of British Columbia. My wife got the heck out at age 17 and moved across the country to go to university. For most of the time after that, she went relatively low contact. A decade ago, my wife suffered from a surgical error which resulted in abdominal sepsis and asked me to call her mother. That made me understand just how deathly serious the situation was. I was to call in the family for what might be the last time. I hadn't grasped that her life was truly at risk until that point. Nothing less would have induced her to try to get her mother to visit. To her credit, Carol did hurry out for what was supposed to be a couple of weeks. It was expected that in that time, my wife would either pass on or be on the road to recovery. Carol stayed in our home, and at first, things didn't go too badly. For the most part, we just didn't talk about the treatments that my wife was undergoing. Carol did express concern about the antibiotics that were being given, since according to her own views, antibiotics did nothing but harm. But a couple of weeks stretched into a couple of months, and Carol became harder to live with. She was angry when I stroked my wife's hair with my hand because I was blocking the energy from her chakra. She started blaming me for having somehow caused the nausea that the botched surgery was supposed to cure. I drove her out to pick up a magical concoction of essential oils on the condition that she check with one of the doctors before applying them. I pointed out that if the mixture had the power to heal, then it also had the power to cause harm, which Carol denied. When we got back to the hospital, I nabbed one of the residents when we reached my wife's floor to ask about that. Carol became furious about that, and it was clear that she had no intention of talking with the doctors. At home, she got worse with me. She was claiming that I was mistreating my wife by not letting her have her things in the house. At that point, I lost my temper. The first time I'd yelled at a person in literally a couple of decades. I told her that almost everything in sight was actually her daughter's, displacing my stuff. The sofas, the piano, table and chairs, the bookshelves, and the electronics. The shelves for the CDs and DVDs were mine, but half the contents were hers. Carol wanted to know if I'd be continuing the herbal remedies after she left, and I told her that that was up to my wife. I'd continue them if she wanted. I'd stop them if she preferred. Carol screamed that I was mistreating my wife by following her own wishes rather than her mother's. On the night before Carol was finally supposed to be heading out, I was restless. That particular nightmare was about to end, but my wife was still quite ill. I got to thinking about that essential oil mixture, which included both oil of cloves and oil of cinnamon. Those are both strongly irritating if left on the skin, and Carol had been painting my wife's feet with the stuff. Her feet were, apparently, the correct energy points to draw out the infection. I went online and found the manufacturer's instructions, which specified that the oil needed to be significantly diluted with some neutral oil if it was going to be applied to the skin. Carol hadn't even been using the stuff properly. Well, that explained why the skin on my wife's feet was yellow and starting to peel. But Carol was furious when I calmly pointed out the problems that she was creating out of ignorance. A few days after Carol left, my wife took a turn for the worse and had to go back into the intensive care unit, and I dreaded the phone call that I had to make. Not because of the bad news, but because I anticipated how Carol would react, and she didn't disappoint. "If you really loved her, you'd put her back on the herbal oil and stop the antibiotics. You know perfectly well they won't do anything." At which point, I hung up. I had other things to worry about. My wife pulled through after months in the hospital and 3 stays in the ICU. She's still in poor health. I told her that I was putting my foot down. Under no circumstances was her mother welcome under my roof again. I didn't care about the family custom that family members were always welcome to stay as guests. I would not stay under the same roof as her mother. Having heard my stories and based on her own experiences, my wife agreed. A few years ago, Carol passed, much as she had lived. She was diagnosed with metastasized lung cancer. Although she did undergo some real medical therapies, she relied mostly on her quack remedies, pawpaw twig powder, whey protein immune boosters, and the like, the usual crap that ethics-free swindlers pawn off on desperate sufferers. She firmly believed that all the little white spots on her lung x-rays were a good sign and that her rapid weight loss indicated that her boosters were draining the cancer away. If there's some existence after death, I hope she came to appreciate all of the harm that she did in life. Except, a couple of nights after she passed, I was driving from the hospital back to the Energy Vortex house. The rental car's navigation device suggested a shorter route that I'd taken to get there. But that route turned into a back road, into a rough road in the hills, into a track through the forest, and in pitch darkness apart from my headlights, over a rocky bump, and directly into a tree trunk. Luckily, I was traveling slowly and I stopped in time. As I paused, shaken, I got to wondering if there might be something to Carol's worldview after all, and if her vengeful spirit might have possessed the GPS device, making one last try at getting revenge on me. No vacation or paid time off until October? Okay, I'm taking all of October off. Something happened at my husband's work last night that reminded me of this decade-old story. For context, at the time, my husband worked overnights at one of the largest supermarket operators in North America. I was about 6 months pregnant, and the store he worked in had a change in who the store manager was, and when I went shopping, I used either a wheelchair or a scooter with a cart on it due to a disability that makes it difficult for me to walk under normal circumstances. Background. Originally, we had felt pretty lucky that between all the pregnancy tests I had done to confirm that yes, I am in fact pregnant, and the ultrasound, the earliest and latest due date we had been given all fell in the first week of September. So my husband had planned to use one of his weeks of vacation that week and then use his paternity leave after that week so he would be able to be there while I was at the hospital in recovery and for the first days of our baby's life. His boss seemed genuinely confused by the request. He was 22, single, and called his truck his baby. But he had said something along the lines of, "Hey man, it's your vacation. You should use it how you want to." Then about a week later, I came home from one of my doctor's appointments to a message on the answering machine saying, "Unfortunately, I have to deny your request for vacation and paternity leave in September, as someone with more seniority has put in for those days off as well. I hope this doesn't cause problems between you and your wife." I burst into tears on the spot, but my husband said he'd go talk to the person who requested those days off, explain that he asked for that time off because it's when the baby is due, and see if he could offer them something to give him those days off instead. Unfortunately, it was one of his coworkers who was going to have major surgery and needed that time off to recover, so we couldn't ask him to trade vacation weeks with us. My husband put in for time off for the second week in September, and it's denied. Then he tries the third week and is denied again. But this time, his boss tells him that he won't be able to use any of his vacation until October due to his position and who has time off. Cue the malicious compliance. We realized that because this boss was new, he probably didn't realize that my husband had been saving all of his vacation days, PTO, and paternity leave. When we added up all the time, it amounted to 3 weeks of time off, and if we worked it around to start around when his days off were, he would be able to be home with the baby from October 1st until November 9th. His coworkers on the night crew and several of his friends on the morning crew felt that he had been seriously done over by the new boss, so they got in on this plan with us. We waited until the boss day off, and that's when my husband put in the schedule for the time off he was requesting, which was approved by the scheduling manager and the night crew manager. This was in July, so the only thing left to do was wait. Our baby was born in the early hours of the morning, about 2 days before our earliest due date after 29 hours of stage 2 and stage 3 labor. I ended up having an induction due to the fact that I had been in early stage labor since the beginning of August and it just wasn't progressing. When my husband called the night shift manager to say that I was going to the hospital to give birth, he told my husband to call in if he was going to miss any more days off work and that they would make sure it got covered. It wasn't PTO, but it was considered an excused absence. After I came home from the hospital, my mom started staying overnight with us temporarily to help out preparing meals, taking care of the dog and the household chores, so I could focus on taking care of myself and the baby. That first month home was pretty rough, so I was relieved when October rolled around and I finally had his help 24/7, and my mom was able to take a break. The aftermath. First up was the 3 days of paternity leave. On the morning of the 5th day of this 40-day-long vacation, the boss woke me up at 6 a.m. wanting to talk to my husband. I told him he was feeding the baby and asked why he was calling. He said he was checking in to see why my husband no-call no-showed the night before, and I said sarcastically, "Oh no, that's terrible. I'll go get him for you." I put the phone on speaker so my husband can talk to his boss while he's feeding the baby so I get to hear everything. The boss very smugly informed my husband that his paternity leave was over, and since he didn't come in the night before, he would be written up for a no-call no-show. My husband said, "Yes, I know my paternity leave is over, but my first vacation week started last night." Boss: "First vacation week?" Husband: "Yeah, I have 3. I was going to use 1 in September, 1 in October, and 1 in November, but since you told me I couldn't use any paid time off until October, I decided to just take all of October off to be with my wife and newborn." Boss: "I'll call you back after I look into this." I don't know how I managed to stay silent and not laugh at this conversation, but somehow I did. We got a call back later that day that went something like this. Boss: "Yeah, I'm going to need you to come into work tonight. I never would have approved your request for time off if I knew you were taking the whole month off." Husband: "You didn't approve it. The night manager and scheduling manager both approved this, so I'm not coming in tonight." Boss, clearly thinking this is a gotcha moment: "I didn't approve it, and I need you to come in tonight, so you'll be here at 10 on your regular schedule for the rest of the month, or you'll be written up." Husband: "No, I won't. I submitted the request in July, and you never denied my request. It's been approved by the other managers, and it's already started, so it's too late for you to deny it now." Boss: "I'll call you back." After that, my husband called the union steward to confirm that he was in the clear, and they say that he is. We got another call the following Sunday, which was my husband's next day off, asking if he would be coming in that night since he wasn't listed as being on vacation in the system. Husband: "Am I on the schedule?" Boss: "No." Husband: "Then it's my night off, so no." He hung up after that, but we got a call like that every night my husband wasn't on the schedule due to it being one of his regular days off and him not being marked as being on vacation in the system. Some of the ladies in the bakery and deli section of the store put together a card shower for us and gave them gift cards since we never said anything to them about when my baby shower was or where we were registered. Oops. Later that week, I made a trip into the store one afternoon to pick up some stuff and introduce them to the baby, and my mom came along too. While we were over there, the store manager came up and said, "You must be husband's wife." I was feeling petty, so I pointed out that we would have met sooner if he didn't have a habit of running away and hiding in his office when customers approached him. I don't know if that irritated him or if he was planning on saying this next anyway. But the next words out of his mouth were, "You don't look like you need help with the baby. Husband said he was taking time off to help you with the baby because you have a disability. But I guess you don't need it, huh?" The bakery deli ladies glared at him, and my mom went pale because she knows I usually react very strongly to those kinds of comments. But my mom also raised me to be civil and mannerly, so I just smiled and said, "I hope you don't speak to your employees like that. That can get you fired. Bless your heart." And one of his employees told him I was right, so he sulked off. He seemed so desperate to find any reason he could to force my husband to come back to work before the end of the month. I started wondering if he was being petty and might try to retaliate after my husband came back to work, or if he was just desperate. So I called one of my husband's coworkers. Remember when I said new boss was 22? Well, he also had a habit of bragging about how he started working for the company as a cashier when he was 17 and worked his way up to management in just 5 years. At some point after the baby was born, District came and did a walkthrough, and it turned out his dad was the district manager and he didn't work his way up to management. He was a nepotism baby. That burned bridges with more than a few employees. Then he turned up in a brand new truck and said with the year-end bonus he was going to get, he could pay it off. And in one go, several employees walked, including 2 on the night crew. Since my husband was on paternity leave, he had to work overnights to make up the slack. He had never showed up to cover overnights when they were shorthanded before that, So we figured he was desperate to get my husband to come back because working overnights was cutting into his dating time. Finally, the end of my husband's vacation time came and his boss called again. Boss, you used up your paternity leave and your vacation weeks. You're coming in tonight, right? Husband, no, I still have PTO days left this year. And since I won't be able to use them all between November and the end of December, and they don't roll over into next year, I decided to take them now. Boss, well, when are you coming back to work? Husband, November 10th. Boss called back the next day to tell my husband that actually he had used up his paternity leave while we were at the hospital giving birth, so he would have to use PTO to cover that. And actually, he had used a week of PTO when he took me to the hospital with fake labor, so actually he would be coming back to work on November 1st. My husband called the union steward and filed a complaint that his boss was retroactively deciding what counted as paternity leave and what counted as PTO, and trying to force him to use PTO days to cover days where he either went in late or left for a couple hours and then came back and stayed late to make up the missed hours. He went in to fill out some paperwork, and we didn't hear from his boss again between then and when he got replaced at the end of the following January. Am I the jerk for making a bratty teen weigh herself at the top of a water slide? I work as a lifeguard at a water park, and part of my job includes managing the top of the water slides. I'm to make sure that no one does anything dangerous, like going face first, cramming too many people in one inner tube, etc. I'm also instructed to ask anyone who looks like they could be over the weight limit, 250 pounds, to weigh themselves on our scale, and deny them entry if they refuse. I'm not super comfortable with this, but it's much better than risking people's safety. Here lies the problem. I lift weights, and for this reason, I am very dense. I weigh 185 pounds, but somehow wear a size 6. Most of my friends also lift and have similar body compositions to me. For this reason, I have trouble estimating how much someone actually weighs. This problem presented itself last weekend when an overweight teenager wanted to ride the slide. She most likely wasn't over 250 pounds, but I couldn't be certain. I've gotten way better at estimating weights, but my supervisor says if there's any chance that they're over 250 to weigh them. So I approached her gently and asked her to please get on the scale. She met me with a snarky teenager attitude and said, "What if I refuse?" She was with a group of teenagers, some of whom were giggling. "Then you won't be allowed on the slide," I said matter-of-factly. She rolled her eyes and got on the scale, and her weight wasn't even close to 250, so I felt kind of bad. She then said, "See?" and went along with her friends. Although she gave me attitude, I could tell she was embarrassed. Her face was red as she went back to her friends, who were all thin. I asked my supervisor how he would have handled the situation, and he said I did the right thing, that it's better to hurt someone's feelings than to break someone's bones. However, yesterday I was called into the office of the owner of the water park. She told me she received an angry email from a parent about how I embarrassed their kid in front of her friends. I explained to her that I was just following protocol, and she asked me how much she actually weighed. I gave her the answer, and she laughed at me and told me I could never get a job as a weight guesser at a carnival and that I need to do my job better. My supervisor is backing me up and saying I was doing what he has required me to do. I'm thankful for his support, but honestly, this whole situation is making me feel like a jerk. I know teens are a particularly vulnerable population, as I was one not too long ago, and I could have possibly handled the situation with more care. But at the same time, safety is my first priority. Does that make me the jerk? No jerks here, but next time, pull 3 people from the group and weigh them all. Sorry, I have to weigh 10% of the people going by to check we aren't exceeding weight limits. That way you don't target or embarrass one person. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for how she handled this or not? Please let us know. Imagine if we get an update of malicious compliance. Water park owner gets mad at me for weighing the riders, so I stopped. Chaos ensues. Am I the jerk for giving my stay-at-home mom wife a written performance review with suggested areas needing improvement? Oh, here we go. I, 33 male, share one kid who's 6 with my wife who's 36. She has another daughter who's 13 that lives with us full-time. We also have custody of our niece who's 15. The teens are each other's best friends. They share a large bedroom, which was done at their request. The dynamic here is pretty much mom and youngest against the teens, with me being the referee between everyone. My wife has taught the youngest she can blame others for her actions to avoid consequences. She just says the word. One of the teens will get punished without question. There's no doubt she is my wife's favorite. I love her, but she's become nothing more than an entitled brat. As just a mere example, my wife and I had an appointment we both needed to attend. When we came back, it was apparent the pool had been used. They're not allowed to swim while we aren't home. As the youngest divulged, "Mommy, I was in my room coloring. I never went swimming." The teen said that wasn't true. She had gone swimming as well. Only the teens were punished. My wife refused to give the youngest any type of consequence. I later found that she had hidden her wet swimming suit in the garage. My wife and I argued. I felt strongly she needed to not only be punished for swimming, but also for lying. After a relentless disagreement, I was silenced as she gave the youngest a very minimal consequence. The lying, blaming, and favoritism ultimately caused the teens to act out, understandably. Most of their consequences are done by giving more chores, specifically the chores the 6-year-old has. Or, as recent, they were removed from music lessons as a consequence. I believe they're so frustrated they don't even care when they verbally attack their mother after her unfair treatment towards them. After all, they already get blamed and punished for things they don't even do. From my perspective, lashing out gives them a release. We've had countless tiring arguments. She'd either not see her faults, or we had agreed to do this and that, but it was never actually done. I decided to write her a performance review as a stay-at-home mom. Her area is in need of improvement. Well, it was a lot. But I touched on how she needs to listen better, stop being biased, be fair in all of her decisions, stop making rash decisions without taking all 3 kids into consideration. I recommended her to give each kid the same amount of one-on-one time to speak, or just be with one another. So it wouldn't be an entire slap to the face, I gave her accolades on her strong points for other areas aside from parenting. I guess I felt this would work best because I could organize my thoughts on paper without her interjecting. However, it quickly backfired in my face. She was quiet the first hour after I handed it to her, then she completely exploded on me, said if we're going to do this type of crap, she'll get a private bank account and take half my paycheck every week. She further said the review was mistreatment and a manipulative jerk move. Am I the jerk? Are you her employer? Because employers give performance reviews. Partners do not give performance reviews. Your family, including yourself, needs therapy. A lot of therapy. You're the jerk. Not the jerk. As the father in the home, it is absolutely your duty to manage your family. Broken and dysfunctional homes are the result of where either the father has failed to manage his family or he is not in the picture. US leads the world in fatherless homes by a long shot, and this is why we are the most mentally distraught country in the world. And what other country are there daily examples of young people going insane and doing things that have catastrophic consequences? The people on here who are bashing you for trying to manage your family, pay them no mind. They all come from broken homes as well and are probably on all kinds of meds to cope with their miserable lives. I managed my family the way fathers are supposed to, and that's why all 3 of my kids are now grown with successful careers and beautiful families of their own. It's also why my wife and I are still happily married after 35 years. Never bend to the will of this dysfunctional society where they want you to be weak, ignorant, and miserable. Am I the jerk for wanting to watch the Super Bowl in my home theater? First world problem here, but I'm being called a jerk for it. A brief summary. I spent most of lockdown turning my basement into a world-class home theater. I designed it, I spent the money, I spent the time. It took a lot of effort. It's a work of art with a 120-inch screen, laser projector, Dolby Atmos sound system, comfy sofas, popcorn machine, and snack bar. It's all as awesome as it sounds. Needless to say, it's become very popular, with family, with friends, with the kids. People are over all the time watching TV, movies, and playing video games. It's great. I love I've created something so many people can appreciate and enjoy. While the vast majority of the time this theater is available, I've made it clear that there are times when I want it for myself, certain sporting events, and most certainly the Super Bowl, which is kicking off shortly. I made it clear anyone who wants to join me is welcome. There will be popcorn, pizza, and drinks. Come on over, should be great. My wife is off doing something else, and our kids and teens are off somewhere else. As it turns out, I thought I might have it all to myself, and that's fine. But like I said, anyone was welcome to join me. I got a call yesterday from family, wife's sister-in-law, who's married to my wife's brother, who have a couple of kids who are 11 and 9, asking if they could come over for it. Sure, I said, but I didn't know you guys were sports fans. I asked if they even knew who was playing. Yeah, she said, Philadelphia, right? The Flyers? No, the Flyers is a hockey team. Whatever, come on over. I thought the worst thing might be I'd be explaining football rules to people who know nothing about the game, but whatever. They came over an hour before kickoff, and the kids ran to the theater while I said the hellos upstairs. By the time I came back down to watch the pre-game show, they were on the PS5 playing and asked what movie we'd be watching, which led me to go upstairs and discuss with the parents. What's going on here? As it turns out, the parents thought they could come over, and of course I'd hand over the theater, and said so to their kids. And my wife is not even here. After all, I just want to watch the game alone. Why not watch it upstairs in the living room? It's a nice big TV. Yeah, no. If you want to watch a movie, go right ahead. The living room is indeed available, but the theater is the Super Bowl. Which led to a stupid argument, me being called a jerk, and crying kids. I think they've left, but I'm not sure. I'm downstairs, alone, and I don't care. But I am upset that this mood is kind of ruined. KC just won the coin toss. This is about to begin, and I'm thinking about this BS instead of the game. I texted and left a message to my wife explaining what happened, but have not heard back yet. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. My wife's obsession with cleanliness is driving me crazy. I had a major fight with my wife a few hours ago, and I strongly think I'm in the right, but she's so angry, I almost feel like I'm the crazy one. I'll provide context. I married my wife 3 years ago, but we've been together for 6. One important thing is to note that she's extremely clean. I regret not moving in together until we got married, because while I knew she was clean, I didn't know to the full extent. Let this be a lesson to live with your partner before marriage. She's the reason why our house looks like a model home. She hates dishes in the sink, while I'm content to let them sit there for a couple days. She spends her days off scrubbing bathrooms because in her mind, they should be cleaned weekly. She doesn't let me bring my shoes inside and insists that I shower immediately when I get home before laying in bed. There are a million more things, but hopefully you have an idea. This didn't start hurting our marriage until we had kids. We have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I left work when our youngest was born, and that's when our disagreement on how clean the home needs to be started to get bad. She expects me to do most of the chores now when it used to be primarily her, and I wouldn't mind if they were reasonable. She wants the kids to have a bath every single day, and I think every 1 to 3 days is fine. She wants all of their toys put away by the end of the day, and I think there's no point when it will be a mess again. She wants the dishes done daily. She wants all house bedding washed weekly. She wants me to vacuum weekly. She wants me to mop every 3 to 4 days, since in her logic, the kids spend a lot of time playing on the floor. They won't get hurt or be sick if I mop every 2 weeks. Because I don't play along with most of her demands, she ends up being the one to do most of the housework when she gets home or on her rare off days. She works 40 to 80 hours a week, so it is a lot, but she does it to herself. I feel I do what's reasonable. This all built up to today. She got home and saw that I hadn't yet washed the dishes, and there was still grease and food in some of the pans and on the countertop. Also, I hadn't yet brought in the trash cans from the previous 2 days when they were emptied. She flew off the handle, calling me lazy and a slob. She said she would like for me to return to work, since in her eyes I'm doing a poor job, and use the money to hire a weekly housekeeper and a nanny who wouldn't leave the kids in PJs all day. I got upset, and I told her she's crazy, and she works herself up over small things, and I will not be leaving my kids with a stranger. She packed a bag for herself and our babies and went to her mom's house. I'm furious. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your standards are too low. I am someone who genuinely has always struggled with keeping my environment clean. But dishes should be done every day. The house should be vacuumed like every other day, not even weekly. Mopping every few days is normal. Washing yourself before getting in bed is my preference as well. Washing sheets weekly is standard. Picking up all the toys and putting them completely away at night is incredibly good for your mental health. Kids are definitely washed every day. Soap is every other day. The PJ thing though, there's definitely 1 day a week on the weekends where we're all in PJs all day. Are you doing this every day? Based on your standards, I'm actually wondering if maybe you're depressed or have ADHD. I have ADHD, and I know that doing the bare minimum isn't easy. Maybe talk to someone and see if you can work through this. You're the jerk. Every single thing you listed as her cleanliness standards are very reasonable in my book. They are the same standards I have in my home. If I had kids, they would likely be stricter, since kids touch everything, put stuff in their mouths, and roll around on the floor. In my book, I would consider you a slob. Right now, your wife is coming home to a place where she doesn't feel comfortable living in. Regardless of how you feel about cleanliness, she isn't comfortable in her own home. That, in my opinion, supersedes your disagreement about cleanliness standards. Think of how you would feel in her place. From what I'm reading here, you're a stay-at-home dad, and you're not keeping up your end of the bargain. If you don't think you should clean that often, then she's right. You should go back to work and hire someone to help clean your house. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. If you're a neat freak like I am, never get into a relationship with a slob. You'll end up resenting them more than you can imagine. Am I the jerk for wanting my son to move back closer to his family? I'm 56, female, and I live with my husband, who's 64. We only have one son, who's 33, who currently lives abroad, and we only see him once a year, as it's very far away and expensive to go. We live in a small town. He moved away when he was 18 for college and never came back. We expected him to move back after he graduated, but he decided to stay where he was, since he already had a job and a girlfriend there. They got married. Our town is close to our state's capital, where his work field is very strong. Ever since his senior year in college, I've been trying to convince him to move closer for a better career and to stay closer to his family. He never showed any interest, which I found odd, especially since his wife also works in the same field. 4 years ago, they moved abroad. I felt betrayed when he told me. He was already living 3 hours away from us. Why would he choose to go even further to another country, but not the city right next to us? I never said anything about it, other than to let him know that his father and I are always here if they need us. Until recently, things were fine. I miss him a lot. We text every day, but we don't get to speak to each other often. The problem is, my father, who's 84, whose health took a dive and is very fragile. And with my son living so far, he's missing a precious time he could be spending right here. His grandfather is not likely to live many years now. I told the news to my son and he was sad about it, and he came to see us and left a week ago. I was honest with him. I said his grandfather won't be around much longer, and since he lives so far away, he'll lose the opportunity to stay close and enjoy the time he has left. He was not happy about me touching this matter. He said I was trying to guilt him into moving back. I asked him why he was doing this to me. Why doesn't he miss me and his dad? We're getting old, and he's only seeing us once or twice a year. It's cruel to us. He said he missed us, but he's happy where he is and does not plan on moving back, and he and his wife are already making plans on buying a house where they live. I couldn't take it anymore, and I burst out crying. I told him I felt abandoned, that he didn't seem to care for us, and that he should enjoy his family while he can, because we won't be around forever. I asked what makes him think he can't be happy living here, and he didn't respond. The few days after this were very awkward, and after he left, he seems to be even more distant, avoiding me and being very short with his texts. Yesterday, his wife called and said my son was feeling bad and had told her what had happened. She called me a jerk and said I had no right trying to manipulate him like that, and I should be ashamed of myself. I don't think I'm the jerk for wanting my son closer to me. They're the jerks for abandoning family. And I'm including her as well, since she did the same. I talk to her mother often, and she's on my side. Edit. I didn't realize we could edit the original post. I just want to add some information. 1. I'm not asking my son to sell his happiness just to be by my side. I just can't see why he needed to be so far away, while he and his wife could have a wonderful career around our area. They could earn more money while staying close to the family. It's illogical for me to think about anything different. 2. Some are under the impression I gave up my life to become his mother, and that's not true. I had my own career and a good one. I worked hard to give my son the best I could. I retired 6 years ago. 3. I realize this is a very strong cultural background where we come from. Family is expected to stay close. My son was the first member of the family that decided to move far away. 4. I don't expect to be taken care of when I get old. Me and my husband already talked about this, and unless my son wants to, we will not ask him to take care of us. 5. Just to clarify, I am not Indian. While I love India, and I've been there once with my husband, I just want to clarify I'm South American. My son currently lives in North America. Edit 2. I think I'm getting it. It's really cultural. Most people here seem to be from the US, and I understand it's really normal for families to be separated once your kids move to college, and that they see each other just once a year at Christmas or Thanksgiving, for example. I was raised to believe families should stick together. I raised my son to have the same values, and I expected him to keep this tradition, but he's broken it. It's not his fault, but I will never be able to understand this decision. You're the jerk. Not for feeling sad that your son lives far away, but for constantly trying to guilt him into moving back when he's made it clear that that's not going to happen. Adults get to choose for themselves where they want to live and what career they want. Your son is not required to move close to you. Oh my goodness. He left home 15 years ago. He has a marriage, a life, and a career in another country. He will never come back, and expecting him to move for any reason at all is just absurd. It's not cruel for a 33-year-old to have his own life. You're the jerk, sadly. You're the jerk. As a daughter who immigrated to another country, I can tell you that if my parents said this to me, I would never want to see them ever again. Lucky for me, I have nice supportive parents who miss me, and I miss them, but always understood that my life is mine to live. You're the jerk. And honestly, given how pushy you seem to be, have you considered that maybe he doesn't want to move back because he doesn't want you in his business all the time? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her son? Please let us know. My aunt stole my inheritance, then her whole life fell apart. My aunt was one of 2 kids my grandparents had. My mother was the polar opposite to my aunt. She worked from the age of 12 in my grandfather's shop, never asked for anything, and eventually managed to start her own business. My aunt never held down a job until the age of 26, was constantly stealing from her parents, and was constantly in trouble. Despite this, my aunt was spoiled by my grandmother, and so were her kids. She had 3 kids from 3 different men, and her first husband was not one of them, if you know what I mean. Didn't matter what my aunt or her kids did, my grandmother would always jump to their defense. She never had time for my mom and her kids, unless it was to get something from us. The only reason my mom would visit her was because she loved my grandfather. My grandfather passed in 2004, and a few months after, my nan decided to write up a new will. My mother and my aunt were both present for it when she signed it, so they knew what was in it. It made it so that when she passed, her home would be sold and the money split 25% each to my mom and aunt, and the remaining 50% would go evenly to the grandkids. At the time, the home was worth more than £500,000, so it would be a nice little inheritance, but nothing life-changing. In 2010, my mom passed after an accident and did not have a current will in place. As she no longer had her business and was renting a house, she didn't have anything of much monetary value. The only thing she was concerned about was what would be done at her funeral should she have passed away, but had told me everything she wanted: the music, the flowers, the coffin color, and even what people were to wear at the funeral. She wanted people to wear bright, warm colors. So when she passed, my aunt and nan took over all of the arrangements and tried to undo all of the things I had told them. The songs were going to be songs I knew Mom didn't like. The flowers were all the wrong colors, and they picked a hideous coffin. With the help of my siblings, we were able to change a few of the things back to the way they were supposed to be, but the coffin couldn't be changed for some reason, and my nan refused to let people come dressed as clowns, so it was all black. It was frustrating. After the funeral, my nan had her will changed. My siblings and I were told by our aunt that she didn't have any involvement with the writing of the will, and our nan told us that she changed it so that Mom's share would go to her kids instead. All good, we thought. After Mom passed, my nan just stopped talking about my mom. At first, we thought it was because she was still recovering from losing her daughter, but even 5 years after Mom passed, she still wouldn't talk about her. Even if you brought up a story about Mom, Nan would very obviously try and change the subject, usually about how hard my aunt and her kids had it. And if you went to talk to her about your own problems, she would somehow bring it back to my aunt. I had suffered a mental breakdown after my mom's passing, so you can imagine how much it hurt to hear, "Well, they have it so much worse." In 2016, my nan passed. She had written down what she wanted to be done for her funeral, and it was basically all the same things she had picked out about my mom's funeral, even the music to be played. I don't know why she tried to have a dress rehearsal funeral using my mom as a stand-in, but it was obvious that that's what she was trying to do. So after a couple of months, our siblings and I were waiting to hear about the will reading, and my aunt kept telling me, "Oh, it'll be another month before we can do the reading." I didn't mind. I wasn't fussy about the money, to be honest, but my oldest brother was hoping to use the money to pay for a honeymoon for him and his then fiancée, and my younger brother was about to start uni, so it would be a huge help. Eventually, my dad bumped into the solicitor my grandmother had used to deal with her will and asked what was happening. The solicitor let slip that the will had already been read and that it left everything to my aunt. When my dad questioned this, the solicitor told him that my aunt had been present when the will was written, despite promising that she had nothing to do with it. When confronted, my aunt initially tried to deny, but eventually admitted to lying to all of us. She showed us the will, and it confirmed what we already knew. The house and all its contents were now my aunt's. This included my granddad's war medals. He fought in the Second World War. When I told her that he had promised them to me before she had passed, she said, "Well, unless you have it in writing, you will have nothing in this house. Anyway, I already gave them to Clive." My heart sank. Clive, not his real name obviously, was her eldest son and the dictionary definition of a screw-up. He had been in and out of prison for stealing and dealing. I knew that the moment that jerk got his hands on my granddad's medals, they would be sold off. We looked into taking her to court over the will, but everyone we spoke to said that we probably wouldn't get anything out of it. She immediately put the house up for sale at close to £750,000. She had upset too many people in our town, so she was going to sell the house and move closer to her daughter, who lives in a big city. An offer was made on the house, and she put down a deposit on her house near the big city, and I thought that was that. Here's where karma comes into play. The people who wanted my nan's house had a survey done on the house to see if there were issues, and oh boy, were there. Turns out that the land the house was built on was way too soft for the type of house it was, and it was sinking. It has sunk about 2 centimeters in the 40-plus years my nan and granddad had lived there, but the sinking was accelerating to 1 centimeter per year. This meant that within the next 3 years, the house would need some serious work or be knocked down. The new value of the house? £60,000. The buyers immediately pulled out of the deal, having not even put down a deposit. She couldn't buy her new house, but still had to pay the deposit on it. And while this was happening, she let Clive move in with her into her house that she rented from the council. He wasn't allowed to live in any of the council houses because he had trashed every single one he had ever been given. Someone reported this, and she was kicked out of her home. She was forced to move into my nan's old home as she couldn't live anywhere else. So there she is, living in a crumbling house with her jerk son and her partner. She was stuck there for 2 years. Every time I saw her, she would try and start talking to me, and I would just ignore her and walk off. One time, as I was walking away, she screamed, "Your mother deserved what she got for having a little jerk like you." In the middle of a busy street, someone reported her to the police, and she had an official warning from them and was ridiculed on Facebook. Every time I saw her after that, she looked more and more miserable. Eventually, she sold the house for something like £85,000 and moved in with her daughter in the big city. I lost contact with her and her kids after this. I thought karma had been issued. Oh, but karma still wasn't done with her yet. I bumped into one of her former friends, and she told me what happened after she left our town. She moved into her daughter's home, let's call her Sue, but they only had a 3-bedroom house and 3 kids. My aunt and her partner had to live in the smallest room of the house while my aunt looked for a job and a home to rent. Even with £85,000, she couldn't afford a home anywhere. After about a month, my aunt's partner ran off after emptying her account. She was left stranded in Sue's house, not contributing anything because all the money she makes goes into bingo. Eventually, Sue and my aunt get into a screaming match, and my aunt said something along the lines of, "I never should have had you." Sue immediately kicked her out of the house. So there's my aunt, in a city where she knows nobody, no money, no home, and the last bridge she had a smoldering wreck. Last anyone has heard, she was living in a caravan in the roughest part of the city, and she can no longer work because she's suffering early onset arthritis and can no longer move her hands. I know I shouldn't get joy out of something like this happening to another person, but it does bring me some peace as to what happened. My son is a thief who stole from his girlfriend and myself. For context, my son, Elijah, is 23 and lives at home partially due to a physical disability. He's currently taking classes online to earn a business degree. He has been with his current and first-time girlfriend, Tanya, who's 24, for 2 years. Tanya is also in college, goes to a local brick and mortar. As I understand, a few months ago, Tanya gave my son a brand new Xbox Series X, which was a bit odd to me. It's important to note, as Tanya's birthday approached, I gave Eli $200 to put towards a decent gift for her since she had randomly gave him something expensive. Fast forward a few weeks, Tanya abruptly stopped coming over. They are adults, so neither my wife or myself pressed him as to why. Eventually, Tanya calls my wife to explain that Eli is refusing to return her Xbox. She was a bit confused. Tanya said they didn't break up but had a fight before she asked for the Xbox back. She also claimed it was never a gift. We spoke to Eli. He assured us it was absolutely a gift, as it was even wrapped. I felt they needed to figure things out on their own. Last weekend, Tanya came over and approached me in our garage. My son and wife weren't home at the time. She had explained everything, then handed me her phone to read their text history. To summarize, one of Tanya's 3 roommates stole from her. 2 days later, the Xbox she had purchased was delivered. Fearing it would get stolen, she asked my son to hold on to it for safekeeping until she found a new place to live. As a direct quote, "I haven't even opened it yet. It just sucks that I'm living with a thief. When I come over, let's set it up at least so that you can use it." He acknowledged everything she had said. Aside from the entire Xbox ordeal, the more I read, the more livid I become. The things my son said to her, speaking to her in the way that he was, I was mortified. This is not the son I raised. I took her into his room and packed up the Xbox. I was in shock to learn about this side of my son that I never even knew existed. I was asking questions and learned the fight started after he forgot her birthday. Days later, she was very hurt and confronted him. In return, he tossed her a wrinkled up shirt that had a $10 price tag on it. She did so much for his birthday, helped his mom decorate and throw him a party. They arrived home a few hours after she left. He just stepped over the threshold and I went off on him. It's not like I can discipline him anymore, but I darn sure wanted him to feel shame and guilt for his appalling behavior. He kept saying that I didn't understand. She's only telling her side. When I informed him the Xbox was gone, he completely threw a 5-year-old tantrum. He called me names and said that I had no business getting involved in his personal relationship. His mother agreed with him and asked what happened to them figuring things out on their own. Legally, she could have just gotten the law involved. 3 days later, he put a keyed lock on his door. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It would be different if he lived in his own apartment, but he's under your roof. You have 100% the right to not want to have some stolen Xbox in your house. You gave it back to the legal owner. You did nothing wrong. Not the jerk. If he took your $200 and bought her a $10 t-shirt, then he's clearly capable of making up a story about it being a birthday gift. She didn't just tell her side, she showed you the texts. Not the jerk. You did the right thing. Your son attempted to steal from his girlfriend while living under your roof. He is in no place to call you names or throw a tantrum. She was rightfully upset. Your son is in the wrong. Your wife is enabling his behavior, which is something you two should communicate with each other about. ETA. If they are adults who can figure it out on their own, then they should act like it. Your son is acting like a kid. Perhaps he should be treated like one in this scenario. If he can't act like an adult at the age of 23, it may be necessary for you to get involved so he can take some accountability for his actions before it turns into a lawsuit. Am I the jerk for bringing my baby to the hotel resort my brother was getting married in? My brother was getting married, and it was a child-free wedding per future sister-in-law's request. The wedding was out of state, so my husband and I were going to make it into a 3-day weekend. We had a sitter lined up months ago. The day before we were set to leave, she had to cancel for a family emergency. We tried to find a last-minute sitter that we trusted and could also do just overnight, but came up empty. I tried calling and texting my brother about the situation, but I couldn't get a hold of him. We were both in the wedding party, and I didn't want to leave my brother and his soon-to-be wife in a bind. So I called my mother after that, since I knew she was with them. I explained the situation, and she said she'd call me back after talking to him. 4 hours passed, and we didn't hear back. We had to make a decision, and since we're currently sharing one vehicle, couldn't really leave my husband and kid without a vehicle, and had put a lot of money already into the wedding and trip. We just took our baby with us. We got there later than we originally planned and just went to our room. The next afternoon was the wedding, and my husband and I planned to swap time out. I'd go to the ceremony and part of the reception while he stayed with the baby, and he could attend the second half of the reception while I stayed with the baby. When the ceremony was over and we were heading inside to the reception, my husband had the baby inside of her stroller. I joined my husband and went to say hello to some family members and went with him to congratulate my brother and new sister-in-law. Husband said his hellos and congrats, then went back to our room with our kid. I left the reception area a few times to bring my husband some small plates of food so he didn't have to wait for his turn to eat. On one of my trips back, my brother spoke with me about it being a child-free wedding, and his wife was upset that my husband had the baby in the lobby and that I kept leaving the reception. I told him they can't be too upset because we didn't bring the baby into the wedding area or the reception. The rest of the time I was at the reception, I kept getting comments from who I'm guessing were sister-in-law's family and her bridesmaids about how I was trying to steal her thunder by having my baby there. Sister-in-law kept asking why I didn't just leave them at home and would not accept my reason for not doing so. It's been a sore spot for my family and her all weekend. Am I the jerk for bringing the baby with us? Info: the wedding ceremony itself was outside in a courtyard. It was not in a closed-off area. We had to go through the lobby area to get to the reception hall. My husband was in the lobby walking with the baby and getting coffee from the hotel shop. Not the jerk. Excited to hear what magical solutions everyone had to offer. You were in the wedding party. You had a solid plan for everything. You showed up and did an amazing job under those circumstances. Not the jerk. You and your husband did all you could to respect the child-free wedding while also dealing with an unexpected sitter cancellation. You tried to reach out to someone in advance of the wedding and did everything you could to not have the baby be the center of attention. The only piece that maybe stands out is the left the reception area a few times, but without knowing what kind of setup there was or how you left, it doesn't change my opinion. Everyone sucks here. I think where you messed up was having your husband and baby greeting guests as they headed to the reception. That comes across as attention-seeking, and I do think it violates the child-free feeling. Yes, other unrelated kids may have been in the hotel, but they weren't going around greeting people, especially to go greet the bride at her child-free wedding. Overall, I think you mostly did the best you could, but I would not have taken the baby around. You're the jerk for bringing the baby down to the lobby so guests interacted with her on the way to the reception. It would have been fine if you had maybe waited until the whole wedding was over, but no, you brought the baby down during the middle. That was rude. I assume your husband knew the timing of the reception, so why was he down there at that time? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Sister-in-law demands I sell her a Barbie baseball cap. I have a baseball cap from my childhood that has a Barbie logo on it. It's black with the name Barbie in pink with a fancy font. My son loves it. He's only 3 and doesn't know what it says. He only likes it because we were looking through the basement in my parents' house and came across the hat and a photo of me wearing it when I was younger. He got super excited when he saw the picture and has been in love with the hat ever since. He calls it the mama hat. Everyone thinks it's cute. We were having dinner with my sister-in-law and her family. My sister-in-law has an 8-year-old daughter who I love. She really likes Barbie and everything she owns is Barbie themed. I had a feeling that maybe it wouldn't be best for my son to wear the Barbie hat while we were there, but he really wanted to show his uncle, aka his best buddy, and my husband said it shouldn't be a big deal, so I allowed it. The night went pretty well, but I noticed my sister-in-law was a little quiet. Right before we left, she pulled me aside and asked if I could do her a big favor. She asked if I could sell her the Barbie hat. I asked her why she wanted the hat, and she said that her daughter's been eyeing it all night and asked for one. I told her to just buy one online or something, but she said that she feels like that would be a waste. I said I was sorry, but I wasn't giving her the hat. She argued that my son is a boy, and once he realizes it's Barbie themed, he'll throw it away. I explained to her that she can ask for it again when the time comes and I'll think about it. I thought that was it, but she went to my son directly and started telling him how Barbie is for girls and that the hat is Barbie. He got upset because to him it's not a Barbie hat, it's a mama hat. I was over it though, and I told her that she definitely wasn't getting it ever now, that if he decides he doesn't want it anymore, it's going straight to the garbage or my mom's basement again. She got all frustrated and said I'm being absolutely ridiculous. She accused me of being a childish jerk and said that I just broke her daughter's heart. Am I the jerk? I'm starting to feel a little bad. I think I might be doing a little too much over a silly old hat. Trying to make a 3-year-old ashamed of his favorite hat is really crummy behavior for an adult. Don't reward it. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not splitting my daughter's college fund? I'm 42, female, and my daughter is 17. When she was 7, we lost her father to an avoidable accident. Due to that and the subsequent settlement, my daughter was able to have a trust fund of sorts that provided for college, grad school if she wanted, and even some left over for whatever life might bring. It is money that, managed wisely, would enable her to have a head start in life. She knows about this and is never taken for granted given where the money came from. After all, we'd both rather have her father around than the money. That said, life moves on, and I remarried 6 years after my former husband's passing to a lovely man who has 2 kids of his own, who are 17 and 13. All of the kids live with us primarily, with his kids seeing their mother on vacations as she lives across the country. This year, both our girls are graduating and should be heading to college. My daughter was admitted ED to her dream school last year and is ecstatic about it. Her father is an alumnus, and she has this old sweatshirt of his that she kept to remind her of him. She cried so much when she got in, and both her stepfather and I were proud of her because she worked hard to get in. My stepdaughter will also be attending a wonderful school that is one of the top-ranked schools for her interests. The problem now arises with the money to pay for stepdaughter's school. Because her parents cannot afford to pay the tuition in its entirety, stepdaughter will have to take some loans. All told, she will graduate with about $40,000 in loans, which I think is still quite modest for the school she's attending and her earning prospects post-graduation. But my daughter will graduate debt-free, and for my husband, this is suddenly a problem. He wants us to split up my daughter's fund between all 3 kids because then they could all, probably, have college fully paid for. My daughter won't have much left over and will definitely need to borrow for grad school, which she has expressed interest in attending. But, according to my husband, that's okay because everyone will start off on equal footing post-college. I think this is unfair to my daughter because 1, her father had to pass for this money, and 2, this is like her inheritance from him. My husband thinks that they are all siblings and should be happy to share the money with them if it means giving her siblings a head start in life. I absolutely do not want to put her in the position of being guilted into saying yes if she doesn't want to. I have expressed all of this to my husband, and he thinks that I'm being selfish, that I'm teaching my daughter to be selfish, and I obviously don't consider my stepkids the same as my daughter. Am I the jerk for wanting to protect my daughter's trust for her as it was intended? ETA. Since I've seen this a few times already, both kids do have college funds, but somewhat smaller because my husband and his ex got their finances together later in life. So there is some money, but with the caliber of the school that stepdaughter will be attending, she will still need some loans to cover costs. I haven't brought up going to a cheaper school because that will be a fresh set of problems given where my daughter will be going. Not the jerk. That settlement was for your deceased husband's kids, not your future kids, and certainly not someone else's. I agree. Not the jerk. The money is for your deceased husband's kids, not your current husband's kids. Keep your stance. This is your daughter's money from her father. The other kids have money from their father. To me, your current husband is the jerk for even suggesting it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. When will the new step-parents stop trying to steal the kids' college funds? The world may never know. Asking my girlfriend to give away her cat because I'm allergic. To give some background, my girlfriend, female 23, and I, male 24, have been dating for almost 2 years, and I asked her to move into my apartment. It's much larger than hers, so it made sense. Having decided to move in, she brought her cat, Riley, with her. She's had Riley for 8 years now, and it brought her tons of happiness. The issue is, I'm allergic to cats, like super allergic. I develop hives, I start coughing, and I get these really watery eyes. I didn't know this was a problem before we moved in, as while we were dating, she used to just come over to my apartment as it was close to both the school she started to work at and my university. I'm in medical school. I would occasionally get watery eyes when she was around, but I always just chalked it up to pollen as it was never severe enough to care. Now though, it's getting to an extreme level. That being said, I know how much she loves Riley, so I tried to find the best homes I could that would take her in. All of them are either people we knew or people who have a lot of experience with cats. I made a list, and then I told my girlfriend the problem. When I asked her to possibly give Riley away, she said she wasn't giving Riley away to an animal shelter. I said of course I would never make her do that, and that's when I showed her the list with all the families. I proposed this to her, and that's when she just lost it at me. I don't know what I did wrong. Am I the jerk? Edit. I've tried a variety of medications, and none of them have worked for a sustainable period of time. Others have been out of my budget to be effectively sustainable. Also, we both wanted to move in together. I just asked her to move into my apartment instead, as it was more spacious. I did not know I was allergic to cats before she moved in. I got tested recently after I got all these symptoms and found out that I was allergic to cats. I've been to her house, and yes, I developed symptoms. They were much more milder, mind you. I just didn't care enough because they were so mild. As for the list, I just wanted to make sure Riley was safe as she is an older cat. I realize now this may have been a bad idea as it cornered my girlfriend into a corner. That was not my intention. I did not intend to do that. I just wanted to give her options. I think the best suggestion was making some no-go zones for the cat. like not having the cat allowed in the bedroom or the office, not allowing the cat in my chair, plus air purifiers, etc. Also, y'all are treating me like a doctor. This is my first year in medical school. I'm not a doctor. Like, I've just gotten in, and I've been in medical school for maybe 5 months. Cut me some slack. I've tried allergy shots. They don't work that well for me, and I cannot afford them as a long-term solution. Update. There are a lot of people telling me to just break up with her. I do love her, but maybe if this isn't something we can get past, then maybe we should consider breaking up. I feel as though she doesn't care how deeply troubling this has been for me. Like, I can't breathe in my own home. I can barely sleep, and it feels suffocating. The only issue is, if I do break up, she would have to go back to her studio apartment where she lives with other people, which had become a toxic environment for her. She was in the situation before I met her, and she had been looking for a way out, but she couldn't afford better housing. I also pay for this apartment on my own, so a sudden breakup would put a lot of financial burden on her. So to ask, do I try to make this work, or do I break up? Also, if I do break up, how do I do it ethically? You're the jerk. You should never ask someone with a pet to just get rid of them like that. Pets become people's family. Go back to living separately and see a specialist about your allergies. No offense, but I'm pretty sure she'd rather keep the cat. You're the jerk. The cat has been longer in her life than you have. How come you didn't know about the allergy before you moved in? Why haven't you spent a few days at her place before? It seems like you won't be moving in together yet because you do not rehome a family member. And most people would dump their partners right away if they ever even suggested getting rid of their pets. Truth be told, I've always asked about cat allergies before dating, and it was a deal breaker for me because my cat belongs to me. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for asking his girlfriend to get rid of her cat or not? Please let us know. If Reddit boy tried to make me get rid of my Fluffy, he'd need a new head. Am I the jerk for giving away my brother's parrot? My brother Don has an African gray parrot. He fell in love with our uncle's parrot when we were younger. He always wanted one, and when he got a job where he could take care of one, he got it. Don was neurodivergent. He had trouble connecting with people, but he loved that bird, and it seemed to return the affection. Don didn't like to travel or leave his home, or do much besides work, play video games, collect Pokemon stuff, and interact with his parrot. I, on the other hand, try and get out of town whenever I can. I also use every second of my vacation time and PTO. Don passed away just after New Year's. He didn't have a girlfriend, much less a wife. He did have a will, and he left me everything, including Ash, his parrot. I don't want his parrot. Trust me, after listening to my brother talk about African gray parrots for the last 20 years, I know more about them than anyone normal should, including that they can live up to 60 years. That would have been great for Don. I, on the other hand, am not planning on taking care of any human kids I have for 60 years. I talked to my parents to see if they would take him, but they said their condo doesn't allow pets. I checked with the rest of our family, and nobody wanted to make the commitment. I contacted a local bird rescue, but they only take wild raptors. I tried the zoo. They don't accept birds. I guess there's a chance of diseases or something. My brother loved this bird, so I wasn't going to do anything stupid with it. Ash was actually growing on me. I was considering keeping him. Lucky for me and Ash, my uncle finally got back to me. His parrot had passed a couple of years ago, and since he's in his late 40s, he didn't adopt a new one. I gladly invited him over to see if he liked Ash. He told me that he and his old bird had met Ash, and even been over to Don's house for a playdate before. It was excellent. My uncle knows more about them than my brother did, and now I have that information stuck in my head. Ash went to live with my uncle. I thought it was the perfect solution until my mom called to chew me out for imposing a bird on my uncle. He doesn't make that much money, and birds are expensive to take care of, I guess. Not that it was any of her business, but my brother left me a nice chunk of change and an impressive collection of Pokemon stuff. I had already told my uncle that I would be paying him for food and vet bills for Ash. I even volunteered to bird sit him if my uncle needed and I'm in town. I know Dawn would want that. She still said it was a bad decision to give her brother the bird. I probably didn't improve our conversation by giggling when she said that. I honestly think I did right by everyone involved, but my mom disagrees. I need someone with no skin in the game to tell me if I'm missing something. Edit. When I said normal, I didn't mean neurotypical. I meant not obsessed with parrots. Not the jerk. You found Ash a loving home with an experienced person. You might have slipped into you're the jerk territory if you hadn't volunteered to cover the expenses for the bird. Your brother would love to know that the person who inspired his love of that species was the person you entrusted to care for his ash. Not the jerk. What does your mother expect you to do? Take care of a bird you don't want? Your uncle is more experienced and he loves them. You even solved the financial issue by offering to contribute. What else is there for your mother to complain about? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is his mom? Please let us know. Definitely mom. I don't know what she's on about. Teach him how to do your job? Okay, boss. So this happened a good 15 years ago, and another story just reminded me of it. To keep it short, 15 years ago and some change, I worked for a local computer programming company that made automation software. Our company got bought out by a bigger national company, and after the dust settled, corporate decided they were going to send a liaison down to our local office to learn how you do things to be a better bridge between offices. AKA, hey new hires, teach our guy how to do your job so we can let 3/4 of you go before your next quarter. None of us were happy about that, but our new corporate overlords had spoken. A month or so later, here's our liaison, fellow all ready to go. So, show me the interface, he said. And that was when we all stopped, looked at each other, and grinned. For you see, the reason it took us so long to bring new people up to speed is that we didn't configure new projects. Configure, in this corporate speak, meant go check off the boxes in an interface until it does what you want. No, my good friends, we coded everything by hand. Our main program accepted straight-up VB files, not even scripts, full-on files, and our new friend here was not a programmer. At all. The guy didn't know a for loop from a bubble sort. So, as we were instructed, we started walking him through our code. Here's our X policy. It's the most common one we use, and it's about 1,500 lines of code in its base form. Didn't you guys say you had some default policies you worked from? Oh yeah, but they end up being more trouble trying to customize than it is to just write the entire thing from scratch. So up here is where we're declaring our global variables. To our friend's credit, he tried. Oh, he tried for days, and every time we thought he was about to figure something out, we intentionally switched him up to an even worse one. We hired requiring a computer science degree, 6 months of on-site gearing up, and another 6 months of shadowing before we would let anyone handle a project on their own. This poor guy got the full year's worth of training in a week. To his credit, on his last day, he flat out told us he was sent down to learn how to replace us, but that he was going to tell them that we were doing a great job, and if anything, our timeframes were surprisingly short given what we were doing. We ran that department for a good 5 years before the inevitable revolving door of upper management decided to bring in a new, easier-to-use suite. People are still saying, man, I miss X. It could have done this in half the time. And instead of a 5-man team upkeeping everything, we have multiple departments that still can't manage to fix a broken image link in the new stuff 10 years later. Am I the jerk for asking my husband to return a gift? In December, my husband asked what I wanted for Christmas, and I told him the UGG Ultra Minis. By that point, they were sold out and on back order. I kept checking occasionally in case they did come back in stock, but they didn't. Fast forward to the week after Christmas. I found a near identical pair of boots from LL Bean and ran it by my husband first since, 1, we just got done with Christmas and it's not exactly a small gift, and 2, in case he did order a pair and was waiting for them to get in. He encouraged me to get them, so I did. I've been very happy with them and put the UGG version out of my mind. For the last couple of weeks, he's been saying that he got me a great gift for Valentine's Day that I'll love and hyping it up. This morning, I went to the kitchen to find flowers, candy, a card, and the UGG boots. I told him thank you, but I was confused because I had the other pair that he told me to order. He acknowledged that he did, but thought I could use a second pair anyways, saying he thought the stitching was different. I asked about returning them because I don't need 2 pairs of essentially the same shoes, and he got upset because it was $25 to get them shipped and another $25 to return them, so we would be out $50. I put the shoes and box away in our closet. I told some friends who followed me on the hunt for these boots, and one offered to buy the extra pair, which would get us out of the $25 return cost. I told my husband, and he got even more upset, saying he would deal with it and took the box out of the closet. I appreciate the gift, and I told him so, but I just don't need 2 pairs of pricey boots. Now I'm getting the silent treatment. I genuinely feel bad because he was so excited about it, and now I'm wondering if I should have just gone along with it. Am I the jerk? Edit. To clear some things up. My husband ordered the Uggs in mid-December, but they were back-ordered until March. They happened to get delivered last week. They weren't even meant to be a Valentine's Day gift. You're the jerk. Sure, it was silly for him to get the boots without checking with you after you got an alternative pair, but he could have thought you just settled for the LL Bean ones, or that since you were obsessing over them and they were hard to find, that you would want a second pair to use or keep as a backup. Regardless, you could have waited until tomorrow to tell him that you didn't want them. You're the jerk. Are you generally this cold towards your husband's feelings, or was this your Valentine's Day special for him? He's such an attentive husband. You asked for something at Christmas, he remembered and got you the present as soon as he could, considering the out-of-stock and back-order deals, and waited for Valentine's Day to gift them to you. I would cry if someone did this for me. You are incredibly ungrateful. Mother-in-law gets upset that I don't want her help in the kitchen. Apparently, I'm still in her doghouse for this, so I wanted an outside opinion. My mother-in-law is not a bad person, but she can be very difficult. My wife, Sarah, has learned to process these things with grace, which I appreciate. I'm still learning, but I'll get there. I hope. One of the ways she's difficult is that she has some manipulative tendencies. A very common tactic for her is to fake whine that she's not welcome here. I guess I'll just go outside, with the obvious implication that we need to comfort her and tell her that she is welcome. I suspect she has some abandonment issues. Again, my wife has learned to deal with this over her lifetime. It's just the way mom is, which is fine. I hate it and it's manipulative garbage, but I might do the same thing. My wife and I bought our first home last year, so we hosted Christmas. This is mother-in-law's first time being a guest instead of the host, so I knew we'd need to be patient with her. She's out of control of the situation. That's hard. Well, it was Christmas dinner cooking time. Our kitchen can be generously referred to as efficient, and I was cooking for 12 people while Sarah played host, and my mother-in-law found every excuse to park herself in my way as I was trying to roast a goose and make 5 sides. I had to ask her several times to move just to find space to chop. Finally, this exchange, recalled as exactly as I can, occurred. Me. Hey mom, you can just go hang out in the living room with everyone else. I got this. Her. Oh, I get it. I'm not welcome here. Imagine this in a fake dramatic tone. Me. Well, yeah, but I figured it would be rude to say it like that. I think she was mad I didn't play along because the facade dropped instantly. She said, fine, and went back to the other group. I didn't think much of it until she told Sarah this week that she was still mad at me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She's not mad that you said that. She's mad because you took her superpower away. She'll get over it. Not the jerk. Her manipulation didn't work on you, and she's big mad about it. I would stop playing along altogether. After all, that's just the way you are. Am I the jerk for not picking my girlfriend's daughter up from an event? I'm 37, and I've been in a relationship with a mid-40s woman, Amy. She doesn't want to tell me her specific age, which I don't mind, for about a year. She has a 17-year-old daughter who I'll call Jess. Over the weekend, Jess had a school event and had asked me for a ride in advance. I didn't mind in the slightest. I drove her over to the school and we had a nice chat in the car. When she got out though, a bunch of her friends were there and she waved to me and shouted, "Later, creepy stepdad," with a huge smile. I think it was a joke to her friends. They laughed and I stared awkwardly for a few seconds. Then Jess said, "Go, go," literally shooing me away. I drove home thinking whatever, but over time it started to really grate on me. I know that she wanted to just show off for them, but I didn't want to be stuck in a car with a girl who considered me creepy in any way. I shot her a text around that time that she would have to find another way to get home. She didn't see my text for some time, but a few hours later, she called me asking for a ride. I told her that I couldn't do that as I had had a couple of drinks, which was true. Then she half hung up on me and apparently called her mother. Amy was busy working on something at the time and told me that I needed to go over there and pick her up. I responded that she could walk, get a ride from her friends, or take public transportation. It was 8 p.m. in one of the safest cities in our country and that she was going to be fine. Amy then walked away, grabbed my keys, and drove off in my car, despite having a suspended license. About 15 minutes later, Amy came home and shrieked at me about my treatment of Jess while Jess evacuated to her room. I told her that she really shouldn't be driving with a suspended license and Amy said she wouldn't have to if I were more responsible. When I reminded her of why her license was suspended, she got furious. It's a pretty touchy subject, and told me she'd leave if she had anywhere else to go. I brushed her off with a lame, "That sounds like a you problem," and we haven't talked since. Was I being the jerk here? Everyone sucks here. 17 is old enough to not insult the person doing her a favor, call an Uber, and apologize when she messes up. 37 is old enough to understand teenagers are kids, be the bigger person, and not break your promise to them. 40 is old enough to actually parent her kid by both teaching her manners and using Uber instead of breaking the law. None of you get a pass. Everyone sucks here. Why are you dating someone who wouldn't tell you their actual age? That's such basic info. What else is she not telling you? That's so weird. Showing off in front of friends by being crappy to someone else is not cool or acceptable in any way. If you already told her that you'll give her a ride, you shouldn't have left her stranded. Be the bigger person. Get them with kindness and so on. Everyone sucks here. 17-year-old stepdaughter's comments were unnecessary, but she's a teenager. They mess up sometimes. Your reaction was a massive overreaction. You still pick her up, then discuss it when she gets home. Girlfriend driving without a license is silly. It means no insurance even if you don't get stopped. I'm not sure how far away she was and what public transport options there were, but she could have sorted out a taxi or something instead. Everyone sucks here. The part I can't get past is how are you in a relationship with someone who won't even tell you their age? And they have a suspended license? Nah, I'd be noping out of this love story. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his stepdaughter and Amy? Please let us know. You need to dump her so you'll never have to deal with those two crazies ever again. An honest class review. This story takes place in the spring of 2008 while I was a senior at my Catholic high school. My AP English teacher periodically asked her students to write a review of the class, what we liked and disliked, what we would change, etc. Now, if you've ever had to do something similar, you'll know that the reviews aren't really meant to be honest, but rather ego-stroking exercises for the vast majority of teachers. My teacher was no exception to this norm. I can't remember why I was in a bad mood that particular morning. All I recall is my upset attitude persisted throughout the day until I got into said classroom. Before class officially started, a friend of mine was being made fun of for having highlighter all over his khakis. One had exploded in his pocket, basically covering everything on his left side. Our teacher then began to make fun of him as well, even making comments throughout the rest of class. Needless to say, this only upset me even more. Cut to the point of class where the teacher began passing out the class review sheets. Being in the horrible mood that I was in, I decided to write a truly honest review of the class. I specifically mentioned how I thought it was childish for seniors to make fun of someone for something so benign, and how it was foolish and unprofessional for a teacher to pile on. It will be important later on to mention that I did not curse, nor did I use any language that I would deem inappropriate within the review. Predictably, I was called into the vice principal's office the next morning to answer for what I had written. The VP started off by saying that my teacher had read my review and began to cry because I had insulted her, and that she wanted me kicked out of class for the remainder of the school year. We had roughly 3 weeks left. Calmly, I asked the VP if my review contained any language. When the VP admitted that the letter did not contain anything inappropriate, I simply said, "Then what am I doing here? You can't hold me responsible for completing an assignment as prescribed by the teacher." Since I had done nothing wrong, the VP and my teacher could not kick me out for the remainder of the semester, and every afternoon until the end of the year, I walked into that classroom with the largest grin on my face. Karen demands I lower the child support I receive from my ex. My daughter's dad, male 25, and his fiancée, female 28, want me to lower the child support that I receive. My daughter, who's 3, lives with me, female 23, and I go through the state for child support. They stated that the original amount he was approved for was too much and dropped down to half of that. I was fine with it at first. It would help pay for childcare fees and school supplies, and I've supported her solely by myself for 2 years now. I didn't get paid for the first or second month yet, and when the state started pulling from his checks, they complained that it was too much. They want to go down again to help save for the wedding. I feel conflicted because I'm happy that he's happy, but as a single mother, it's been a struggle. I don't ask for money from them at all, and they do not want her full-time either, which I'm fine with. My daughter means everything to me. They want to make an appointment to lower the amount, and I don't have the money at this moment for a lawyer to argue it. They both make twice the amount I do. so I don't understand the big deal. For additional context, I live alone with my daughter. He's engaged to my cousin, and they do not give me any information about where she's going with them and do not ask for her or call her outside of his weekends. Not the jerk. Your cousin chose to marry a man that already has a kid. Your ex is responsible for supporting his kid. Do not lower the child support. Your expenses will continue to rise. If you give in to this pair now, wait until they have a kid. They will double down trying to get you to reduce the child support because now they have a kid of their own to pay for. OP. The fiance does have a kid already, and although I understand that kids are expensive, he does so much more for that kid than I've ever seen him do for his daughter. What worries me the most is that she works for the county that we live in, and I'm always living in fear that they'll use something against me. But this is the most affordable living area that the state offers. Not the jerk. This money is for the well-being of your kid. You say that you struggle. You're struggling because he wants to be a deadbeat and not provide the financial support his kid needs and deserves. A wedding is a party. You do not leave a kid in need because you want a fancy, expensive party. Keep going through this state and insist on whatever the authorities consider appropriate. Your kid's father is a jerk for thinking that a party is more important than his kid. Am I the jerk for letting my daughter wear a tiara to my cousin's wedding? I'm 32, female, and my daughter, Chloe, who's 4, has a fascination with princesses. She loves the color pink, wears only dresses, and has an array of tiaras she wears everywhere except at preschool where she can't, but she does have it in her backpack. My cousin, 33, male, Alex, fake name, invited us to his wedding, which was this past Saturday. Chloe was excited because she got to dress up and stay dressed up the entire time. She also couldn't wait to see the bride's dress. She asked if she could wear her princess tiara, and I said of course. We got to the wedding on time. However, the start time was delayed for unknown reasons. 15 minutes after it was supposed to start, one of the bridesmaids came out and told me that the bride, Jen, who's 31, female, was refusing to come out because my daughter was wearing a tiara. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. Apparently, the bride was also wearing a tiara and wanted to be the only one wearing it. I told the bridesmaid that Chloe loves tiaras and always wears them. The bridesmaid said, "Not today she isn't," and told me it needed to be removed. I said no. The bride is a grown woman and was being petty over a kid's tiara. The bridesmaid left for a couple minutes, and then Alex himself came out. He told me to leave. I asked why, and he said because I won't tell Chloe to take off the tiara. I said this was ridiculous, and Alex said it's not my wedding, and when I get married, then Chloe can wear one to mine, but that I'm officially uninvited regardless. Others around me told me to just take it off, and I wouldn't. Alex's mom came over and escorted us out. Chloe was upset and crying because she feels she did something wrong, and I'm upset because I can't believe someone would be jealous over a literal 4-year-old. I also feel bad because Chloe was really looking forward to seeing Jen's dress because she loves wedding dresses. But literally, no one is on my side. Am I the jerk? Edit. Someone asked if my cousin has an illness. I said no, but the bride has Asperger's, and they said that's important for you all to know. You seriously need to parent up and teach your kid that there's a time and a place for indulging your inner princess and a time and a place for sitting back, following dress codes, and letting other people shine. For example, at their own wedding. You were asked nicely, but you were petulant and entitled. You caused this. It's not over a kid, it's over your lack of parenting. There's a reason nobody is on your side. You're the jerk. I agree with this. 4-year-olds should be taught time and a place for attire. She didn't wear a tiara to preschool, as mentioned by the OP, so a wedding is also a specific occasion. I personally would find it cute if I were the bride, but everyone is different, I guess. I think the bride's wishes, while over the top here, should be respected. Yeah, wedding conventions are stupid, so it's a frequent gray area here. But no one's saying OP's a jerk for thinking the bride is being extra. She's a jerk for digging in her heels for no good reason, refusing to teach her daughter an age-appropriate lesson about etiquette, and ruining her daughter's day on top of upsetting the bride. I'd bet they were quick to yeet her because stuff like this is part of a larger pattern. So, you need a man to do all of that? Okay. Context. Since I, male 28, was 11, my parents have been divorced. My mother, female 64, got custody, and we would see our father one weekend every 2 weeks. I also have a little sister, female 25, so I ended up being the only man in the house. Growing up, our mother always taught us that we needed to participate in house duties, such as washing the dishes, taking out the laundry, preparing food. We would take turns, and during the week, us kids would take care of all of that because our mother would come back from work exhausted and expected to not have anything to do once at home. And we kind of were okay with that, only that as we were young, we would sometimes, often, forget to do stuff, and it would cause a fight. But we ended up learning to not forget. Only there are some tasks that wouldn't be fairly distributed. My mother always needed a man close so that she could give him some work to do. And even though she never remarried and only dated 1 or 2 men after she divorced, she always found some male friend or some friend's husband or boyfriend to whom she could ask for help. Until at some point, people started to realize that she was being close to them for the only purpose that she could ask them for help. Yeah, she's one of those tit-for-tat persons, where if she does something for you, you have to give back something equivalent or you disappear from her life. So basically, she lost a few friends. But at some point, I was old enough to be useful, and she started asking me for help on these matters. OP, the internet box doesn't work anymore. Can you look it up? It needs a man's brain to understand that. OP, I bought some furniture from IKEA. Can you build it for me? It needs a man's brain to understand that. OP, can you carry luggage? Only a strong man can do that. OP, can you look up why my computer is being so slow? It needs a man's brain to understand that. And so on. I asked repeatedly that she looked at how I dealt with these things so that she could understand herself and fix it alone next time, especially when it was something so basic as to restart the internet box. But she didn't want to learn. She just wanted me to do it because she didn't want to have to deal with it herself. And it went on for a few years, growing from just restarting the box to piercing into walls so that she could hang mirrors and stuff. For info, I never did any of all of that before she asked me to do it. So I guess it made me learn it, which was a good thing. But what bothered me was that she just didn't care and expected me to do all that because it was normal. And me knowing about it or not was not a question. I am a man, so that's my job. And as I was growing up, and her still not learning anything, I got more and more frustrated. Until this one final time, I don't remember what specific task it was, where she told me that it was a man's job, needing a man's brain. I had a huge sigh, did the job, then went back to my business. Cue the malicious compliance. As some tasks require a man's brain, it's obvious that some others require a woman's touch, as we men are all about technique, big thinking, and strength work. So the following days, I started to wash the dishes and put them back anywhere in the kitchen, because, you know, us men have no idea about what goes where in the house. We just fix things and carry heavy stuff. I forgot to get food back in the fridge because, you know, that's already cooked, so it won't spoil. I overcooked my steaks, eggs, pizza, because, you know, I was so busy thinking about all this technique stuff that I didn't have the brain space to think about checking food. Laundry would be spread out to dry, one piece onto another, because it is more efficient as it saves space. And about cleaning the house, let's just say it was a waste of time because I could perfectly live in my own mess. Of course, it didn't take long for my mother to get angry at me for not taking care of the house, or for doing it so stupidly. To which I answered, sorry, I mean, you know, it needs a woman's brain to understand how to take care of a house correctly, which yes, is total BS. But so is saying that all the work she made me do was only for men. So at first she was dumbfounded, then the storm unleashed. It still is one of the biggest fights we've ever had to this day. Things calmed down and I went back to caring properly, until she asked for my man's brain again. From this point, I stopped caring. I would forget the laundry in the washing machine, let the dishes pile up in the sink, and would only do my man job. She would still get really angry, ordering me to do stuff, which I would ultimately do, completely half-effortly, meaning that she had to do it all over after me because half of the dishes were just out on the kitchen, not at their place. Laundry was all stuck together to dry and so on. Mood in the house was tense, and it wouldn't need much for a fight to blow up. Until at some point, she asked me to help her do this or that, not to do it for her anymore. So I helped. I showed her how to do it. I took time for it. We did it together multiple times until she finally learned how to do it. I then started taking care of my duties as I did before, and things went back to normal, finally. My Karen sister-in-law completely trashed our property. Now I'm suing her. I'm 24, female, and my dad is pretty well off. He owns multiple properties in both the country I live in as well as back in his home country. Because of this, and the fact that my husband and I both have good careers, my sister-in-law has always had a snobby attitude towards us and my side of the family, and tries to mooch off of us at any chance she gets. When we go out to eat with my husband's side of the family, we're expected to pay. Christmas and birthday, his side of the family expects good gifts, etc. His sister is currently on her third marriage and has 3 kids, all under the age of 10. Her and her husband were looking for a place to host their wedding and approached me about using one of my dad's properties to host it. I was very hesitant at first to help her because of the treatment that she's given me in the past, but it's my dad's property after all, so I contacted him to ask about it. He said it's my call, but told me to, 1, have them sign some type of agreement stating that if any damage is done to the house, they're liable, and 2, they're going to be charged a reasonable fee to use the house. We both agreed on $1,500, which I believe is very reasonable considering this is a massive house. I told her and her husband about this. They asked about a family discount. I told them this was a family discount and take it or leave it. They signed the agreement and they paid. Fast forward 2 days after the wedding, I went over to the house. The house is a complete mess. Bed sheets are stained, a vase destroyed, alcohol bottles floating in the pool, etc. I contacted my dad to tell him, and he tells me to assess the damage and see how much it is. It was around $1,000 worth of damage. My dad contacts my sister-in-law himself and explains to her the damage and what she owes him. She loses her crap and starts going off about how this is BS. We're family. She shouldn't even be charged in the first place. We're so well off, we can happily afford to pay for the damages. If she gives him that money, they won't be able to afford to go on a honeymoon, etc. She then calls me up to harass me and starts calling me names. She says that I think I'm too good for everyone else and says, "It's a wedding. What do you expect? Sorry, my people know how to have a good time." My dad gives her 30 days to pay. She was notified about this. 30 days comes and no payment. So my dad gets his lawyer to contact sister-in-law, explaining how she's being taken to court for not paying. Her and my mother-in-law have been contacting my husband nonstop, trying to get him to give her the money. He refuses because he agrees that what she did was irresponsible and wrong. I had to block my mother-in-law and sister-in-law after they sent me mean messages and even tried to show up at my house to talk to me. I feel bad that my husband's relationship with his mom and sister is going to be ruined over $1,000, but I feel like what she did was wrong and she wasn't even sorry about it. Edit. I should also add that my sister-in-law and her husband were given a key to the house to use it and lock it up when they were leaving it. The key was returned to me at my house. The next day I went over to the house, which is when I found the damage. So they left the house in the condition for me to see with no care in the world. Not the jerk. Your sister-in-law messed around and she found out. Good life lesson for her. Sucks for your husband, but it also shows him how little regard his family has for him. Not the jerk. Honestly, this might be quite a blessing for your husband. His mother and sister are horrible people. They caused actual damage and have insulted you, your father, and your husband for simply asking them to be responsible for themselves. If they choose to step out of his life over this, so much the better. Fight with my son? Get kicked out of my house. My son, who's 17, loves the water. Ever since he was little, he's always wanted to be either at the beach or the pool. He loves to swim, surf, etc., and I mean it when I say it's his favorite thing. We live near a beach, so sometimes he'll just go sit at the beach for a while. It's something he's been doing since he was 12. My sister and her kids were visiting and it was going fine. But then I noticed my son was never home. I asked him about it and he said that it's just really overwhelming at the house because his cousins never leave him alone. They're 8 and 9-year-olds and they adore him. So he just goes to the beach to avoid them. I told him I understood and I talked to my sister and she said that she had talked to them about it. Well, yesterday I came home to my nieces sitting in the living room watching a movie. My son and sister were nowhere to be found. Neither of them were answering the phone either. I'm not usually concerned, but my son always sends me a text or answers my phone calls at least. I got the girls and went to the beach and found my son at his usual spot. But my sister was there too and she was yelling at him. She said something along the lines of, "You do realize that you aren't in some film where the main character's like connected to the sea or has magic ocean powers, right? Like, you do realize that you aren't like that Percy Jackson character, and your dad isn't some sea god. My son looked incredibly upset, and he has an explosive temper, so I knew he was about to say something crazy. So I immediately jumped in and asked my sister what her problem was. She looked taken aback, but said that she told my son to watch the girls while she went to get food. But when she came back, he wasn't there and the girls were alone. My son insists that he said he was busy, but my sister insists that he didn't. They went back and forth on this without letting me get a word in, and I eventually just told my sister that this wasn't working out and that if she was going to fight and argue with my son and mock him, that she isn't welcome in my home. She looked shocked and said that I need to stop coddling my son and stop feeding into his ridiculous delusions. I just told her to pack her crap. She said that her daughters will remember this and that I shouldn't be surprised when no one wants the weird side of my family, meaning my son and I, around anymore. I feel bad because her daughters looked genuinely upset, and I mean my son could be lying as well. And I don't know, maybe his love for the water isn't healthy, but that's never crossed my mind before. Am I the jerk? Edit. I suppose the mocking doesn't make sense without context. My son's father left us. When my son was younger, my brother got him into the Percy Jackson books, and my son got pretty attached to the character and would tell people that he was the character, and would say that his dad was similar to Poseidon, which is why he wasn't around. I haven't read the books, so I don't know the details, but it was for a very short while when he was a lot younger. He hasn't even mentioned Percy Jackson in years. And to be fair to my sister, she texted me before leaving the girls and made sure I'd be there soon. I doubt she would have left if I wasn't nearby. I don't know how far into the argument they were, but it strikes me that if your son had agreed to watch the kids and then left, your sister wouldn't be saying he had a delusional relationship with the water. She would be saying, "Why did you leave my kids unattended when you agreed to watch them?" Also, if she were genuinely concerned about her daughter's well-being, I'm not sure why she would have left them to go yell at your son. Anyway, not the jerk. Am I the jerk for calling my mom when my husband refused to listen to me? I, 26 female, recently moved into my first home. I'm also 4 months pregnant with our first baby. The pregnancy has been very hard. I have horrible morning sickness. It reached a really bad point where I passed out and hit my head, and my doctor admitted me to the hospital for a week. When I got home, my husband allowed his brother's family to move into 2 of our 3 bedrooms. They were evicted, I don't know why. My office was tossed into our room and papers were everywhere. The house was a complete wreck. Trash, dirty dishes, used diapers. I started to cry. It was like a light flipped. My husband was no longer the same. My husband told me it wasn't that bad. My reply was, "Fine then, you should have the house cleaned up before I wake up." Completely exhausted, I fell asleep for 4 hours. I woke up and went to go get a drink of water. I couldn't. Every glass we owned was scattered around the house. They didn't clean a single thing. I passive-aggressively started to pick up the dirty dishes and wash them. The following morning, I was trying my best to work when their kids were crying nonstop, banging on the walls, and so on. Their mom was in her room for hours just ignoring them. When my husband came home, he was upset with me over how I didn't make his brother's wife feel welcome in our home by helping with their kids when she was tired. Then continued to complain how nothing was done around the house all day while he was at work. Yup, the same one he didn't clean. That led to a fight where I told him, "I'm too sick to have company and they need to leave." To which he replied they are his family and he won't kick them out. I started to cry again. I was beyond frustrated, exhausted. I physically couldn't do it anymore. I called my mom asking if I could come stay with her, telling her the whole story in front of my husband, who at this point was completely shocked, angry. Also, I could tell he wasn't sure what to do. My mom came with my brothers. I have 3 older brothers. My mom was super angry and told my husband, "Since your family can come stay, so can we." My mom quickly took charge. I was sent to bed. My brother started cleaning, complaining loudly at how disgusting my brother-in-law's family is, along with what a horrible husband my husband is for putting me through this while I am sick. I got a text message from my mother-in-law calling me names for not helping my husband clean up the house and putting my brother-in-law in an uncomfortable position by having my mom boss him around. Edit to add update. When my mother-in-law showed up, she was super angry outside. I could hear her shouting, but I couldn't understand what was said. Once inside, she was shocked. The house looked really bad. My brother-in-law lied to her about what happened. My mother-in-law quickly started to help my mom in the bossing mode. My house is not just cleaned, but deep cleaned. My brother-in-law and his kids are now staying with mother-in-law. She didn't know about the evictions. My in-laws helped them financially a couple of months ago. My mother-in-law was not happy about it. Sister-in-law refused to come out of the bedroom. She would scream through the door, but that was about it until her family came to pick her up. Last little bit, I did talk to my husband. He seemed very remorseful. I asked for some space, so he's staying at a hotel. He asked to come by and talk to me tonight. My mom and dad are here. Both moms felt like I should have someone here since I'm sick. Both moms have set up a meal plan, where they trade off who will bring in dinner. It was my mother-in-law's idea. Thank you for all of your advice. I truly appreciate it. Wait, your mother-in-law called to fuss at you for involving your mother? Not the jerk 1000%. But house guests in a shared home require 2 yeses and only 1 no. Both of you agree or it shouldn't happen. Your husband treating you like this, I'm not sure I could deal with it honestly. Can you go stay with your mom? OP, I agree with the 2 yeses and 1 no. I wasn't even asked to say no. Which is a huge sign of disrespect and a major red flag. Does he do this a lot? Does he actively treat you like a partner, or does he just decide things and you go along to keep the peace? This will not get better, OP, if you don't set some major boundaries. Again, that he did this while you were in the hospital suggests he knew you didn't agree and wanted to present it as a done deed you couldn't and wouldn't be able to argue with. Go stay with your mom and let him enjoy living in the filthy bed he's made. I'd honestly tell him that you're not coming back until they're gone and your house is as clean as it was when you left it. If he won't or can't, then you know where his priorities are. You're pregnant. The house you describe is unfit to bring a newborn into. Depending on how bad and what country you live in, the authorities could step in. Is your marriage worth potentially losing custody of your baby over? Because I can tell you right now that it shouldn't be. That baby has to be your #1 priority, and living in a house full of dirty dishes and moldy food ain't it, sis. My heart hurts for you, but you deserve so much better. OP, he has always been very respectful. It was like a switch went off, and he's no longer acting like the loving person that I know he is when he's around his brother. I know this may be hard to hear, but I don't think this is about his brother. You're now pregnant with his baby and tied to him forever. This is when a lot of bad people show their true colors. It's time for you to start thinking about exit strategies. Not the jerk. In fact, I think you are underreacting, which is understandable considering your current health. For the record, OP, I do hope that things aren't as bad as they seem to us outsiders based on this one story. But for your sake, and that of your baby, please at least get a plan in place in case we are correct. I mean this in the nicest way possible. Please start prepping for divorce. Your husband moved in people to the home without consulting you first. He is prioritizing their needs over the needs of his wife and unborn baby. Not the jerk. After 2 years at my current job, one table last night finally broke me. There's a regular older couple that comes in. The wife is known to be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They were showed to their table, and I wait until people have their butts in the seats to come greet them. Well, I took too long, about 45 seconds, because they were dying waiting on their drinks. I had to ask what their drinks were because they're not my regulars. They were already upset with me. I gave them about 5 minutes with their cocktails and came by to ask if they would like more time with their menus. She told me in a special tone that they needed time to enjoy their drinks. This was fine, but I did need to get it rolling soon because there's a turn on the table. They finally ordered, and she told me in her special tone to make sure I do not rush them tonight. I told them I would not. First course, they spent 20 minutes eating soup. They had empty soup bowls that they didn't want me to clear. Finally, she waved me down and told me that they wanted their next course. She pushed her soup bowl into my hands and then pushed her empty martini glass to the very edge of the table, so I assumed I should take that too. She said, "No, no, no, don't take that yet." Like loud enough for other tables to be like, huh? She was getting extremely irritable and her tone was really hostile. She waved me down to take it a few minutes later. They did not want to be offered any more to drink, and as I was walking away, she started talking crap about me. In plain voice, where I could hear a couple of tables over, she said, "She is so strange. Why is she acting so uncomfortable, like she's afraid?" I tried to ignore it and walked faster. Second course was another 20 minutes. They barely touched their salads, and I asked twice how it was and if they were enjoying everything. finally asked if I could take the plates when they had their plates pushed away. "No, you certainly may not." Every time I left the table, I heard her talking about me like, "What is wrong with that girl? Is she new?" Blah, blah, blah. Several minutes later, I heard her direct her husband to wave me down because she was done speaking with me herself. He asked me to take their plates, and they needed their next course to hurry up because they've been waiting a while. The same people who did not want to be rushed. I asked her if I could box their salads. He said, "No, we really just want the main course." I immediately brought them their intermezzo that comes out right before the main course, and they both got upset. He said, "I said the next course, please. We've been here a little too long." I told him it's on the way. I got it to them really quick, and she had something to say about the presentation. She had never seen lobster presented like that, and I just didn't have time for it. I had 5 other tables. Same deal with the main course. They didn't want to give it up, then waved me down, and she was fuming. She said something being beyond ridiculous. I asked, "Is everything okay?" She rolled her eyes at me and said, "No, not everything is okay. Some things are fine, but other things are not okay." Her husband said, "Do me a favor, box the rest of this, and we need the dessert yesterday." I said, "Okay, I'll go do that." At this point, I was kind of shaking at the way they were talking to me, and the fact that I heard some of her comments about me throughout the night. I might be low intelligence. I'm not a good waitress. I behave too awkwardly. I'm sloppy. The owner's hiring standards have gone down, etc. I didn't say another word to them after that. When I left the room, the food runner overheard them talking, and this lady was saying things about me that caused the food runner to approach our manager to speak with them. The manager dropped the check off and their leftovers and desserts. All my other coworkers who are familiar with them were saying they're a weird couple, but that was over the top rude tonight. The food runner wouldn't tell me what she heard them say. Apparently, they talked to the manager, and they told her I had no sense of urgency, and I needed some pep in my step, and it seemed like I had no idea what was going on around me. The manager told me it was baseless BS. Having people on my side didn't matter though. I'm not a crier, but I did cry 2 little tears during the Valentine's Day shift and several after I got home. I think what really got to me is the bartender who usually serves them told me that I should forget it as quickly as they do because they won't remember who I am or that they treated me like this next time they come in. I don't think I'll forget. I'll never serve them again. Would I be the jerk if I filed another noise complaint about my neighbor's very loud toddler? I'm really torn about this. I, female 33, work fully remote and am a bit of a homebody, so I'm usually in my apartment most of the time, either working or living my life as one does. Several months back, we had a family move in across the hall from us with a girl who was around 2 or 3 years old. They moved in over the course of 2 weeknights, so lots of banging and shout-talking in the halls between 10 to 12 at night, so not a good first impression for both myself and my roommate. Over the months they've been here, their little one has proven to be extremely vocal. While I'm working, she will often scream at the top of her lungs, loud enough that it feels like she's standing directly in my apartment. I've had people on calls with me, while I'm wearing headphones, ask who's screaming in the background, and I have to apologize and state that it's my neighbor's kid. Even at night, I'll hear her screaming when I'm all the way in my bedroom, which is the furthest room in my apartment from the front door. It's not so much, "I'm scared" screaming, that would warrant a different call, or, "Yay, I'm a toddler having fun" screaming. It's more of, "I'm throwing a tantrum" screaming, and there are some days where it's near constant. I'll be doing laundry on the bottom floor, we're on the top floor, and I can hear her all the way on the first floor, just yelling and screaming clear as day. I've called and complained about them to our office. They also shout talk in the hallway to each other when they have visitors, and no carpet in the halls means it echoes and it's loud. And I know multiple other neighbors of mine, both on the same floor and downstairs, have called with complaints too. Yesterday I had called in with a bad migraine, and even in my room with the door closed, I could hear her going full air raid siren, even until 10 p.m., and that just made my blood boil. It doesn't even sound like her parents try to get her to calm down. I've spoke to my friends with kids about this, and they've told me to just keep it moving because parenting is hard. I am an aunt to 2 spectacular kids, so I get it, but I don't think I should have to deal with an out-of-control toddler who screams all day and night. My neighbors already have 2 violations for excessive noise, and I believe one more could get them evicted. While the noise is definitely an issue they've been warned about multiple times by management, I should add that they don't speak English, or I would have talked to them myself, and interferes with both my work and downtime. I can't help but feel immensely guilty knowing I may get a girl and her family evicted. But even as I write this post, she's banshee shrieking and has been off and on for close to an hour. Would I be the jerk if I filed another noise complaint, even though it may result in a family getting evicted? Edit. Just making an edit to answer some questions I've been seeing asked repeatedly on here. Noise-canceling headphones aren't always an option for me. My job requires I make calls, and I can't make and take calls with earplugs in. Also, I've had people tell me they can hear her over said headphones, which is embarrassing. My office space is in an open area, so I can't really noise-proof my home office. It costs $1,000 to break my lease, and I have a roommate to consider. I've also been in my apartment for 8 years, and they've only been here for about 5 months. The only thing getting broken around here are eardrums and my patience. I have no clue if she's on the spectrum or not, or if she has a disability. I cannot move my home office, nor can I work at a friend's house, as I work in a department that works in confidential information, so I need to be at home or at the office. I also suffer from chronic pain, so work from home is easier on me mentally and physically. Also in my post when I said, I'm an aunt, I get it, I meant that I understood that kids can be loud. I get it to a fault, not completely as I'm not a parent, but I understand. Thank you very much for all the feedback that's been given so far. I really appreciate it. Clearly, you are not the only person who feels this way, as they have other noise complaints against them as well. If they've received noise complaints and still have done nothing to change the situation, then they only have themselves to blame. I get that parenting can be extremely difficult, and there may be issues that they are just struggling to solve with their daughter, but in that case, they need to find somewhere to live where they aren't causing all their neighbors problems. Maybe apartment living is not for them. You're definitely not the jerk here. Well, what would you do with the situation? Would you call in another noise complaint or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk if I tell my friend her boyfriend is planning to propose? I'm 27, female. My best friend has been dating her boyfriend, who's 26, for over 5 years. A while back, he reached out to me to help figure out ring size and the setup so that he could make this the most magical day for her. Having known my friend for over 20 plus years, I know exactly how she wants her proposal to go and who she wants to be there. So I relayed all this information to him months ago via text and over the phone. I even took the time to covertly find and confirm which ring she would love the most. A little background. My friend is incredibly family and friend-oriented, and in the past expressed to me on multiple occasions, especially during holiday season, that in the 5 years they've been together, he hasn't really made much of an effort to indoctrinate himself into her family or friendships the way that she has for his. While I do generally like him, I've always felt that he is incredibly self-serving and self-focused. Recently, through a mutual friend, I found out he started a group text between his, emphasis on his, friends and his family to set up the time and date of the proposal. He has not only excluded myself, and according to the screenshots I've seen, he's doing everything verbatim I suggested he do, but he has completely excluded her family and other close friends from the event. He's planning on only having his boys and family present for the occasion, and knowing my friend, this would ultimately break her heart not being able to share this moment with her loved ones. I got heated and called him. At first, he was dodging my questions, then just outright said, "This is my proposal, and I've spent enough time and money to choose how I do it. Just be happy for your friend. It's not like you're not coming to the wedding." This infuriated me, and to make matters worse, I ran into her mom and dad at the grocery store and subtly asked if they knew of any possibility that she was getting engaged. They were unaware, and I know for a fact that my friend has told him that he needs to ask her parents for their blessing. She's somewhat traditional. My friend wears her heart on her sleeve, and I can predict how this event will go down when she sees all of his close friends and family and none of hers. Considering her previous sentiments about his lack of interest in her family and life, she will 100% see this as being hurtful and selfish, and I know she'll cry. To make matters worse, the location of the proposal is a whopping 30 minutes from her parents' home. I don't want to get involved in a fight or reveal the surprise, but on the other hand, I feel I owe it to my lifelong friend to help her avoid being hurt and disappointed. Maybe even helping her rethink what her future would look like with someone who just doesn't really appreciate what she values in life. So, am I the jerk if I tell my friend her boyfriend is going to propose? Do not tell her. As much as you know her and want this proposal to go as planned, it is ultimately up to her boyfriend how he wants to do it. If your friend is disappointed, then that can be a sign to discuss with her fiancé about moving forward. It's not your place to tell her or intervene at this point. Let the guy royally mess up his proposal. It's not like you haven't warned him. You can't tell him anything anyway. I hope your best friend sees all of the flying red flags. Sadly, you would be the jerk. Don't tell your friend. I completely understand why you want to, but hear me out. Let this dude show his true colors. If you get in the middle, then you seem petty and jealous. Let him propose his way, and when your friend comes to you and complains, you can kindly and gently tell her that you tried to get him to incorporate her friends and family. Then you can gently ask her if she wants to spend the rest of her life with a man who doesn't honor her wants and desires. I repeat, just let this play itself out. You would be the jerk if you interfere prior to the proposal. Boss says the time reported by the punch system is law. Watch me use the law to my advantage. 8 or 9 years ago, I was a baker at a popular fast food chain in my country. I had always been a model employee, so one day I was surprised when the manager asked me into her office. She reprimanded me because I had taken a 45-minute instead of a 30-minute break one day the previous week. I remembered that day, and indeed I had taken more than 30 minutes, 31 minutes to be exact, and that was because on my way back, someone had a concern that I took the time to resolve. I explained that to her, but she was adamant that the system rounds to the nearest 15 minutes and that if it said 45 minutes, then there was no way I could have only been 1 minute late. She made it clear that it was my fault and that the punch system is law since it can't lie. On my next shift, I looked into it. On the punch system, there's a way to see at what time you punched. I realized that the system was not rounding the amount of time you worked or were on break, but rather the time at which you punched. What happened that day was that I punched out at 10:22, rounding to 10:15, and got back 31 minutes later at 10:53, rounding to 11, hence the 45-minute break. Now in my position, I had the luxury of choosing when to go on break as long as they didn't run out of anything during that time. From that day till the day I switched jobs a few months later, I made sure to go on break just after the cutoff and back just before the next one. For instance, punching out at 10:08, rounding to 10:15, and back in at 10:52, rounding to 10:45. I thus ended up with 44 minutes of break that according to the system were only 30 minutes long. One time a supervisor told me that it seemed like I was gone for a bit longer than usual. I replied that she saw me punching in and out and that she could go confirm in the system if she wanted to. Never heard from her after that. Edit. The manager was also under the impression that the system rounded the amount of break time to the nearest 15 minutes, not the ins and outs. That's also what they say during recruitment, which was why I initially thought that's how it worked. The supervisor who noticed was a part-timer, not the same person as the manager. I also don't think they actually cared, just found it strange. Before leaving, I did share the trick with a few coworkers, but since cashiers have a supervisor that coordinates break time, they can't really be late. For them, 1 minute late is actually noticed by someone, let alone 14. Am I the jerk for deleting my cousin's precious wedding photos? I, 17 male, agreed to take wedding photos for my cousin Sarah, who's 26 female, wedding. She wanted me to take photos of her getting ready, our grandmother putting a family heirloom necklace on her, and the first look, the wedding, the reception, etc. There was also another photographer, a friend of the groom, who was taking photos of the groom and his side getting ready, and he was also taking photos at the wedding and reception. Since I wasn't a professional photographer by any means, I told her I would only charge $50 for the entire day. And when I say entire day, I mean it. From 8 a.m. until 10 p.m., I was with her taking photos and basically being harassed by her, her bridesmaids, and my aunt. She was a full-on bridezilla the entire time, not just to me, but basically everyone, including her husband. It was a long day to say the least. So after all of that, I went home, edited the photos, and copied them onto individual USB drives for people she might want to give them to. I texted Sarah a couple of days later to let her know they were ready and that I would be happy to meet up with her to exchange them for the $50. She never responded. For the next 3 weeks, I texted, called, got in touch with her mother, my aunt, and even stopped by her house to try and get the photos to her. She evaded every single attempt. 6 months passed since the wedding, and I was at the movies with my other cousin, who's 19, male, who was Sarah's younger brother, and a couple of our friends. He tells me, "By the way, Sarah was wondering when you were going to give her the photos. She said she would pay you the $10 if that's the only reason you're taking so long." I was livid. First, it was $50. Second, that was the deal from the start. I told my cousin this and said to Sarah if she wanted them, she needed to contact me within 2 days so we could meet up with the payment, or I was going to delete them. This might come as a shock considering the title of this, but she never contacted me. The 2 days passed, I deleted the photos and erased the USB drives. Less than a week went by before my aunt called me in a fit because I threatened my cousin into paying me when she didn't have the money. I told my aunt that she has had a little over 6 months to pull together $50, which she knew was the agreed upon amount, that she refused to respond to me no matter what I tried, and that it was too late now because the photos were gone. My aunt, uncle, and a few other relatives have been refusing to talk to me or my parents because I deleted precious photos that can never be taken again, all because of greed. Literal quote. My mom thinks I should apologize and I'm just being stubborn. However, my older brother thinks I held on to the photos longer than I should have and that I should have deleted them after the first week of trying to get into contact with her and being dodged and ignored. So, am I the jerk for deleting my cousin's wedding photos? She had a whole wedding and then couldn't get $50 for the photos in 6 months? Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Sounds like those photos weren't very important to them. Kind of dumb on your part to delete them though. Should have kept them and jacked up the price when they asked for more. It's not like having a thumb drive is a burden to you. Not the jerk. I don't see how you could have tried any harder than you did. She obviously didn't care about seeing the photos if she had been ignoring you for 6 months. Roommate's crazy girlfriend tries to control my diet. I feel like this is entirely ridiculous. I live with my roommate, Matt. We used to be pretty close friends, but over the last 2 years of living with him, we've drifted apart, and I'm just waiting for our lease to end to move out on my own. Matt's girlfriend, Sarah, pretty much lives with us now, despite not paying rent. I won't lie, she annoys me to no end. She's an entitled airhead who thinks the world revolves around her. Anyway, Sarah has a condition where she gets nauseous at the slightest smell and sight of certain foods. She's an incredibly picky eater, and anything outside of corn dogs and chicken tenders makes her nauseous, according to her. Well, unfortunately for her, I like to cook. I love heavily spiced foods and love to cook Asian-style dishes. So living with a toddler who can't stand the smell really sucks. Sarah has always complained about me cooking smelly foods and has asked me to stop or do it when she's not home. Well, considering she doesn't pay rent and spends 18 hours a day at my home, I have not accommodated her at all. Last night, Sarah and Matt set me down and told me I need to stop cooking because Sarah cannot stand it anymore. Apparently, she had a mental breakdown last week when I was cooking curry. She claims I'm making our apartment a hostile environment by ignoring her concerns. I told both of them to buzz off until Sarah starts paying her share of the rent. Matt said that because he lives here, his opinion matters as well, and he wants me to stop. I told him no to that as well because he's only doing this because Sarah is being a baby. We ended up having a massive argument, and neither of them is talking to me. Both of them are staying at Sarah's mom's house right now. I say good riddance. At least I did until I told the story to my coworkers, and they're all shocked. They say I'm being a complete jerk. This has given me second thoughts on if I was the jerk in the fight that we had. Not the jerk. You told both of them to buzz off until Sarah starts paying her share of the rent? This is exactly what you should have said. They can find things to do outside of the house as she does not even live there. Have you talked to your landlord about the extra tenant? Did you get a choice when she moved in? Or was it like, I guess she's just staying here from now on, without a word? Either way, I would tell them I'm going to continue to cook my own food, and if you have a problem with that, I'll bring it up to the landlord that you, roommate, brought your girlfriend in to live with us, and she doesn't pay rent. And seriously, if the cooking bothers her, she can leave to go to another room and light a candle or burn some incense. I'm a picky eater, and I love the smell of different types of cooking styles. For example, I love the smell of mushrooms, garlic, and onion being sauteed, but could never eat it because, ew, mushrooms. It sounds like he moved her in, and they're trying to force you out before your agreement is done so they can have the place to themselves. Not the jerk. Edit. I had another thought. Her condition. Is she one of those rare people who have a higher sensitivity to scent and needs a basically sterilized room, otherwise she's sick all the time? Or is she pregnant and they aren't telling you? Because I was turned off by scents and seen certain foods when I was pregnant. Who do you think is the jerk? OP or their roommate and his girlfriend? Please let us know. The guys who date the Karens and make excuses for them are just as bad as the Karens themselves. Am I the jerk for leaving when my fiancé introduced me as a bookkeeper? I, female 45, Have a fiance, male 55, who is a retired military officer. I own a successful company I started 7 years ago and have a small staff of 25. I worked my way through college, paying as I went. Therefore, I graduated in my early 30s with a double major in accounting and business management. I'm very proud of that. For a little background, I worked hard for my degrees and I have zero debt. I know it took me longer than the typical student going full-time to college after high school. I worked full-time to pay as I took classes. I went to junior college first, then finished at a 4-year. I took 2 classes per semester for a long time, but I finally made it. I've been teased that junior college isn't the same as going 4 years to a major university. Well, I'm proud to have done both and feel the education I received at junior college was excellent. I worked as an accountant for some large corporations as well as programming and IT. I started my company doing similar support to large and small companies alike. I have a wonderful staff. I manage the contracts, kick-off meetings, sales and consulting staff. I also do some of the consulting and most of the sales and contracts. My sister is my office manager, and I'm blessed in so many ways to have her. I was dating my now fiance before I started my company, and we recently got engaged. Everything seemed to be perfect, except he keeps introducing me as a bookkeeper. No disrespect intended to them or the profession. My issue is that I've worked hard to get to where I am. I'm an accountant, graduate with a double major, and a successful business owner. He could pick almost any other title to introduce me as, but he chooses bookkeeper. I've asked him many times in private to stop calling me a bookkeeper, as it implies to my clients and business associates that he doesn't respect me or what I have accomplished. He said he doesn't see the big deal or the difference and continues to do so. I recently pulled him aside and asked him to just introduce me as a consultant at the event we were going to. While there, we were talking to a prospective client for my company, and he says, "She's come a long way for a bookkeeper." I know my face had a fall blush at that, excused myself, and walked away. We had both driven there, so I got in my car and went home. We both have our own townhomes. I sent him a text to let him know that I was leaving and I would talk to him later. He thinks I'm overreacting. My family thinks he's a controlling jerk that doesn't respect me, but not sure what to think now. He seems so supportive when we are together, but not when we are around other people. He tends to treat me like a subordinate, nice kid, playing with the adults. He does talk down to me in front of my family, but I always assumed he was joking badly. So, am I the jerk for leaving and overreacting? Not the jerk. This man is military. He understands what titles are and why they matter, and he's doing this on purpose. ETA, your family thinks he's a controlling jerk that doesn't respect you? If you love and respect the opinions of your family in other circumstances, and you trust them to have your best interests at heart, then you should always listen when they say things like this to you. In the end, you get to make your own choices, but when you have a loving family, the chances of them saying this without meaning it are really slim. The people who love us can see what we can't, and they want what's best for us. She's come a long way for a bookkeeper? That is what's called a backhanded compliment. It sounds nice enough if you don't think about it, but its whole purpose is to knock you down a peg and make sure you don't believe in yourself more than you believe in him. You're definitely not the jerk. You've attempted healthy communication multiple times, and he continues to refer to you in a way that's belittling and disrespectful of all that you've accomplished. He can no longer play the clueless card. You've made it very clear how this is affecting you. I think your family is right. I actually do work here, but probably not how you think. Context: I work in a hospital. I also have a baby face and I'm short. On any given day, I can be mistaken for a high school student playing dress up, so I don't really begrudge people for mistaking me for a volunteer, unless you're mean. It's a weekend and I'm scheduled to work 28 hours. In my hospital, our staff are pretty distinctive. Nurses wear white, surgical staff wear blue, and techs and other staff wear black. I'm wearing the baggy surgical scrubs to be as comfortable as possible. I'm rushing around trying to see my patients and stop by to say hi to a few nurses I recognize. We chat a little and one asks me where I'm going. I mention the patient room and they give each other looks, bad sign number 1, before looking at me and assuring they'd check in, bad sign number 2. I thank them, then I dip into the patient room. Me: "Hi." Patient, visibly irritated: "About time you came in here. I'm done with my food." Me: "Okay, do you want me to clear that tray for you?" Patient looks at me like a jerk. Well, I'm done with it, aren't I? Alrighty then, grumpy guy. Whatever, it happens. I go to move the tray, and I notice his wife sitting in a chair by his bed. She's looking apologetic to me and moves to take the tray, but I wave her off and settle into the side. Me. Hi, I'm patient. I need to go to the bathroom. Me. Okay, I can come back if you'd like. Patient, again looking at me like I'm a jerk. I need to go to the bathroom. Me. Sir, you're welcome to use the restroom. I can come back when you're done. Patient. This place is ridiculous. You aren't even going to help me. I'm out of major surgery, and you can't help me up to go to the bathroom. Me. Pulling out my patient list, more for show than anything else because I have it memorized. This jerk had finger surgery in his non-dominant hand. He has one completely unwrapped hand and his legs work fine. According to my records, sir, you passed your physical therapy yesterday and have unlimited ability to get in and out of bed and move on your own. However, I also can provide a urinal for you if you'd like. Patient starts yelling. This is ridiculous. I just had major surgery. I'm in pain. You want me to just lie down in pain? You should be helping me. At this point, I see a few nurses duck their head in to check on me, but I wave them off. This dude needs an ego check. Me. Sir, if you want assistance with your meals, we will provide it, but we will not tolerate being talked to like this. Patient. I'm not listening to some nurse tell me what to do. You do what your job is. Patient's wife. She's not a nurse. Patient. I don't care what she is. I'm not listening to any of this. I don't ever want to see you again. Me. Just to confirm, sir, you said that you don't want to see me? Patient. Did I stutter? I said go away. I want a new nurse. At this point, his nurse steps into the room with hospital security, the kind who are built like NFL linebackers, respond to psych issues, and have handcuffs. Nurse. Doctor, I called security out of concern for staff safety. Security officer. Are you okay, and do you require assistance? Me. No, but I would like you two to witness for me that the patient would no longer require our services, and pain management will sign off now per patient insistence. I'll alert his surgery team. Nurse and security officer nods. Nurse makes a note in her papers. Patient is now visibly buffering as he's processing. Patient, loading, probably like at 50%. Wait, doctor? With pain management? Me. Yes, I'm the pain management doctor. Your team wanted me to see you to assess your post-operative pain, but I understand that we are not needed. I'll let your team know. Patient, anger downloaded. You could have told me that. You're leaving? I want a new pain doctor. Me, smiling serenely. Sir, it's the weekend. I'm the only pain management doctor. And as the two other witnesses have noted, you have fired me from your area. Good day. I go off on my merry way as this guy starts going ballistic. It's not standard for the pain service to be asked to see a hand surgery, but I did it as a favor to the orthopedic surgeon since the patient is, quoting the surgeon, a little jerk about his pain. I asked the nurse to let me know what happens when the patient realized I'm the only one in the whole hospital who can write for high doses that he keeps demanding. Update. Boss told me to deep clean the back and to not come to the front for any reason, so I did. Friday rolled around after I came back from the small vacation I had. The location had no service. I greeted some of the servers that I'm cool with, and they all gave me an oh crap look, since apparently my boss had been trying to call me to come in to open and close on Wednesday and Thursday. Obviously, I didn't know this since I had no service where I had been at the time. I make my way to the boss, expecting to get a freak out from him, which surprisingly he didn't have. He welcomed me back and asked a couple common questions about my trip. After 5 minutes of talking, he springs on me. Since you didn't come in on Wednesday and Thursday, you need to come in Monday and Tuesday of next week. To which I replied, did you schedule me for those days? And he immediately replies with, no, but I know you have nothing better to do since you're just a teen. At this point, my face just looked like I had seen a bear riding a bicycle while juggling bowling pins. I was absolutely amazed at how those words came out of his mouth with such ease, like he really believed he had any sort of power over me. I paused for a moment and said, no, I don't think I'll be doing that since I'm not currently scheduled on those days. I will not show up on those days. He then tried to argue that he had to come in on his days off to cover my shifts. I learned from the servers that he never showed up. The last thing I said to him before I started working was, this isn't my problem. Hire more people. And I walked off. Saturday, the 11th. Today was looking like it was going to be pretty mundane. Busy floor, a lot of food needing to be run, tables that need to be put back together. Pretty usual tasks for the job until my boss showed up and started barking orders even though the restaurant was very packed and we needed all hands on deck. But obviously, that's not what he wanted. He could care less if the restaurant went to the toilet. All he cared about was being in control. The boss tells me and a server to go clean the storage closet, and if we don't, we can just be cut. We both reluctantly go and do it since he had 4 tables to attend to, and I wanted to help him so he wouldn't get bad tips just because a man-child wants to give tasks that can be done later and lay it out on the table for us to see. Super Bowl Sunday, the 12th, was supposed to be a really slow day since we don't have any TVs on the walls and we don't serve bar food. But as soon as church got out, we were super slammed to the point you couldn't even see the front door, and it stayed like that until 3 p.m., and I was just ready to leave. So I clocked out on time as you would at any other job, and my boss saw that and said, "Are you not being a team player right now? You're just going to abandon the ship like that?" To which I reply, "Well, yeah, you only have me for the time scheduled, not for when it's convenient for you. I have no problem working over the time I'm scheduled for, but I just can't with the snarky remarks and annoying temper tantrums that he has on the daily. I'm just very done with him, so why would I go above and beyond for him? Plus, it was the Super Bowl, and of course, I had plans. I wanted to hang out with my friends and not work." Thursday, the 16th. I received an email from the new place I'm going to be working at, and I got the job. The new job will be paying me $16 an hour, double what I've been making. I also start Monday. I had gone to work the same day and told my boss, I will not be able to put my 2 weeks in. However, I will work through this Sunday, and that will be my last day working for you. I hope that's enough time for you, so you can find my replacement, and if this doesn't work for you, I can always make my last day be today, since Texas doesn't require employees and employers to submit a 2-week resignation. He starts to freak out since Monday through Thursday of next week, the restaurant has a bunch of large reservations. He replies with, "If you stay with us, I can give you a big raise for all of your hard work." My eyebrows raise since there's no way that this raise will match my new employer's rate. Intrigued, I ask, "How much were you thinking of giving me?" Drum roll, clears throat. "I can give you a 25-cent raise, which will make your paychecks a little bit heavier." I'm dumbfounded. My brain packed up and jumped out of my head. This was the best deal I could have gotten ever. Forget the new job. Who can say no to an extra $20 on their paycheck? Kidding. I politely declined and told them I had already made up my mind, and for the rest of my shift, he was in the office scrambling around, posting job listings and looking for applications. It's really crazy how someone goes from being a complete dictator to a servant when they lose their power. These last 2 days, he's been nothing but cupcakes and sunshine because he knows I can leave whenever I'd like. Am I the jerk for leaving when I refuse to eat my boyfriend's mom's food? For context, I'm dairy intolerant. It makes me incredibly sick. So I, female 24, have been dating this guy, James, male 27, for 6 months now. We live in California. He moved here for a job. I've just always lived here, whereas his parents live in Missouri, so I've never really had a chance to properly meet them. About a week ago, James told me he was going up to Missouri for a few days to visit his parents and asked me if I wanted to come along and meet them, which of course I said yes to, as I naturally wanted to meet his parents in person. We arrived here yesterday, and I had made it clear to James to inform his parents that I am dairy intolerant, and he assured me that he had told them and that they knew, so I assumed there was no issue there at all. So on to the issue here. His mom was in the kitchen pretty much all day yesterday preparing a meal, and I have to say, it smelled amazing. I asked her what the dish was, and she told me it was a chicken korma curry. I assumed that she had substituted the dairy ingredients, like the yogurt and cream, with something else, so I thought nothing of it. Come time to eat, she presented me with the dish, and it looked and smelled amazing. I asked her for confirmation if it was dairy-free, and she looked at me as if I was some sort of an alien and asked why on earth a chicken korma would be dairy-free. I told her I was lactose intolerant, and she started getting extremely angry, saying that I should have told her earlier and she didn't have anything else she could make for me. James chimed in, saying he did tell her about my dairy intolerance, but then turned on me, saying that it wasn't that bad of an intolerance and I should just eat it. I honestly just felt really backed into a corner, so I started crying, saying I'm sorry, but I can't eat this. And then I left and booked myself into a nearby motel. James keeps calling me, saying how upset his mom and dad are, and saying how I disrespected his mom by not at least trying her meal. I just feel really upset, and maybe I should have just eaten a few bites and sucked it up. The intolerance isn't so severe that I'd end up in the hospital, but then again, I'd rather not have horrible stomach issues. Also, I feel like I shouldn't have just stormed out like that. Am I the jerk? Update. Thank you for all of your responses. You've all been really nice and I appreciate it. A few of you have mentioned that it was a bit overdramatic of me to storm out instead of trying to smooth things over, which I completely agree with. It's just for me personally, I don't do well with confrontation, and my fight or flight response tends to kick in when I'm presented with situations like this. So yeah, I do regret the way I responded, but unfortunately I can't take it back now. So I did finally respond to my boyfriend's calls. He was extremely apologetic and came by my room to see if I was okay. However, as soon as he got here, he started ranting at me again about his mother and her hurt feelings. I told him to leave, and I plan on getting a flight back from Missouri to California tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's a $100 flight and takes a chunk out of my budget. However, I'm feeling really uncomfy in this situation, and I want to be alone. Update 2. I just want to edit this and clarify something. There's been a few of you telling me it was my responsibility to tell his mom, not his. The reason why I couldn't tell her myself beforehand was because I had never met her before. Therefore, I had no way of contacting her except through James. When we arrived, she was already in the kitchen cooking the meal, so I couldn't have told her before she started cooking either. There really was no way I could have done anything. I just took James' word that he had told her. You just learned that 1. Your boyfriend lied to you about telling her, and 2. He would rather you be in horrific pain and discomfort than admit the truth. This boy does not care about you. This is your first red flag, and you need to pay attention to it. Leave him, not the jerk. Do not leave your classroom without asking permission. This happened yesterday. I teach at a public school. Occasionally in the hallway I teach in, there's an overwhelming sewage smell. Normally it's an inconvenience, but not so drastic we have to move rooms. Yesterday, it was the worst I've ever experienced since I started teaching at this school. Teachers immediately tried to move their classrooms, get out of the hallway, etc. One class moved into the principal's conference room, and from the gist of it, our principal was livid that her space was invaded. We received an email stating that we are not to move our classes without notifying our supervisor. Now that seems logical. However, the email went on to say that we are not allowed to leave our room to stroll, visit other classrooms, etc. without speaking to our supervisor or the front office. I was absolutely fired up when I read this email. I wanted to make her regret sending it as quickly as possible. I notified everyone in my hallway that they should be calling the office every time they needed to use the bathroom. I encouraged as many teachers as possible to constantly be calling to notify of their movement around campus. Within 2 hours, I had called the front office 4 times, once even just to let them know I was walking down to the front office. Most of the teachers in my building called a couple times. Once, when the main receptionist was on lunch and another support staff was covering for her, I called to let them know I was going to the bathroom, and the woman on the other end sounded so confused. "Do you need something?" she awkwardly asked. I explained that, per the email, it was expected of us to notify the office of our bathroom breaks. She chuckled and told me to have a good time. Within 3 hours, we receive another staff-wide email explaining, "Okay, some clarification, and that we should not call the office if we need to go to the bathroom, have a stroll on campus, or visit another teacher's classroom." I walked down to the office later that day with the biggest grin on my face, and every support staff knew exactly why I was so happy. We all had a good laugh. One of the support staff said to me that the principal said, "I didn't mean it literally." If you're going to put something in writing to a group of professional educators and be aggressive and rude about it, you better know exactly what you're saying. The vehicle won't flip? Whatever you say, boss. So this story's from my IT teacher. We'll call him Joe. Before he was an IT teacher, he served a few years in the Marines. I don't know how many in total. He tells us a lot of stories about his time in the Marines. Some of them are really fun, and others are pretty somber. He's told us about his PTSD. It's entertaining nonetheless. Anyways, one of the stories he told us today I knew was perfect material for this sub. I did ask him for permission to post it. So when he was in the Marines, he was a sergeant. However, at the time of this, a new person joined the Marines and was about 17 to 18, much younger than him. Joe was probably in his mid-20s at this time. The new guy, we'll call him Noob, was a higher rank than Joe, but still younger and a bit cocky. So Joe and the rest of his platoon were going over Mount Fuji on an amphibious vehicle, basically a big military van. So considering it's a massive mountain, they came to a part of the mountain that had a really steep tilt to it. Now keep in mind, there's two types of radio communication, intercom and radio. Intercom means where it's being said will be told to everyone who has a radio, but radio will only go between two people. So Joe was driving the vehicle and they got to the steep part. Noob decided that he thought the vehicle could survive it and make it over fine. Joe knew that it most definitely wouldn't. He was in the Marines for much longer than Noob. Noob, over the intercom, argued with Joe. He was telling him to go forward and that the vehicle would make it, but Joe argued back with him saying it wouldn't. Eventually Noob said, "I'm ordering you to drive this vehicle forward now." Now, given that this was a direct order, Joe obviously had no choice but to comply. So, over the intercom, Joe told the rest of his platoon to buckle up and hold on tight. He closed the latch above the seat and buckled up too. Noob was confused by this, but didn't buckle up or close the latch above him. Joe started to pull forward, and once they got onto the steep part, they were going decently good. Noob seemed pretty confident. However, almost immediately, the vehicle started to tip slowly, one of those where you can feel it for a little before it tips. So Joe held on tight, and then they fell. They tumbled around and around like 5 times. During their falling, Noob flew out of the hatch, or jumped out, he wasn't sure, but wasn't really hurt. He only got a concussion from the door to the hatch hitting his head as he went out. Joe was fine due to being buckled up, but some of the other passengers weren't buckled up, so they flew around. Most of them broke a bone or two and/or got a concussion. Once they stopped, Joe got up and left the vehicle. Their gunnery sergeant, we'll call him Red, immediately ran over. Now Red was your textbook tough guy Marine sergeant. He was almost 7 feet tall, extremely built, broad-shouldered, everything you'd expect. Joe immediately started explaining that it was an order and that he had to listen. Red said he heard everything due to the argument being on the comms. Noob ran over a minute or so later and started yelling, "What did you teach them? They don't even know how to drive." Basically, sicking the blame on Joe. Red, having heard everything, stomped over to Noob and grabbed him by the front of his shirt, yanking him forward and yelling at him. He then pushed Noob forward and socked him right in the face, knocking him out and dropping him. Joe did say to the class that if Noob hadn't said everything on comms, he could have gotten in trouble, but most likely he would have straight up said no to going forward. But it was just too perfect. He's a great teacher and everyone loves him. Am I the jerk for objecting to a group of people coming in and playing a loud game at my table in a coffee shop? My team at work is remote, so I work from home. I typically spend part of my workday at a local coffee shop where most customers are working on their computers. It's a popular spot, so sometimes it's hard to find a table. Often, customers who don't even know each other will end up sharing the largest tables. When I arrived at the coffee shop today, the only open table was the largest table in the shop. It wasn't an enormous table. It seats 5 people total, but only 4 comfortably. I set up my computer and I got to work. I was finishing up a weeks-long project against a deadline later today. About half an hour later, 2 men approached the table and asked if anyone was sitting on the other side. I said no and moved my sweatshirt off the table to make room for them. I assumed they were there to work because they wore backpacks. They set their backpacks down and went to order their drinks. When they came back, one of them said to me, "Just so you know, 6 more people are coming and we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons here, so it will be pretty loud." I objected. I said that it was fine if they were here to work or have a conversation on the other side of my table, but trying to squeeze 7 people into the 4 remaining seats and playing a loud party game wasn't going to work for me. They told me I was entitled and that because this was a public space, I basically just had to deal with it. I thought this was rude. I told them that they were crowding me out of my own table because it would be impossible for me to work at the table if they were using it as a game table with a lot of other people. They had already asserted that it would get very loud. I decided to leave because I didn't have time to waste with a fast approaching deadline. As I was packing up, they mocked me for being upset, saying that they were confident I'd figure it out and that this too shall pass. Because there were no open seats in the coffee shop, I just went home. To me, it seems that if someone is at a table first, then anyone who joins that table should be basically respectful of that person. Yes, it is a public space, but am I really entitled for asking that they not disrupt my table with a loud game because I was already sitting there? What's the etiquette for sharing tables in a public space? Edit. To clarify, the coffee shop is right next to a university. Some people bring in 27-inch desktop monitors and camp out all day. I don't. 95 to 100% of the customers are studying or working. It's definitely the norm at this shop, more so than others I go to. Before my current laptop-based job, I worked as a barista for several years. I know to share space, and I also keep buying things to pay for the space I occupy. I buy something every hour, including at least one meal each time I'm there, and I usually stay 1 to 3 hours. Not the jerk. People that come along later with more people than there are seats for are rude. That is apart from many other noise considerations. However, people do like to push single folks around. Not sure about the noise factor. I think the only recourse you would have had would be to complain to staff. They're the only ones that have say-so over customers' behavior. And if this group regularly comes to play games there and the management doesn't mind, then you do have to put up with it. My coworker is mad that I wouldn't work without clocking in. So I'm 16 and I have a part-time job working carry-out for a chain restaurant. It's hourly plus tips. So Tuesday night I was scheduled 4 to 9. I don't drive, but my ride dropped me off like 15 minutes early. No big deal, I thought. There's a whole section of the restaurant that's only used on weekend nights, so during the week, employees sit at the tables if they're on break during a double. So since it's winter and I can't clock in more than 5 minutes before my shift, I figured I'd sit there and play on my phone or talk to coworkers. I wasn't there long, and one of the hosts that I thought I was cool with, Sarah, comes up to me and said, "Carryout is really busy, and Tim needs help." I said, "Okay, I'll go find a manager and ask to clock in." Sarah was like, "You can't just help him?" I said, "Yeah, as soon as I clock in." She rolled her eyes and walked away. I had to walk all over looking for a manager, including past the host stand. When I walked by the host stand, Sarah said, "You're seriously not going to help Tim for a few minutes?" Eventually, I found my boss and I clocked in. The other host said Sarah kept complaining about it all night. I mean, I see both sides. It was probably annoying that carryout was busy, because if the carryout phone isn't answered in so many rings, it goes to the host stand, so it probably made more work for the hosts. My reasons for not working were, 1, I want to be paid for my time, obviously, but 2, my parents always told me not to, because if I get hurt working off the clock, the company won't care. 3, if I did it once, Sarah would expect it all the time. I worked with Sarah yesterday, and she still had an attitude. Sarah is a few years older than me and has worked there longer, and people like her, so I might have just made myself the disliked coworker over a couple of minutes. Was I wrong? Do not ever work off the clock. It's illegal, and your parents are right. Sarah is not your manager, but if she was, she could get in serious legal trouble for trying to get you to work off the clock. Sarah is probably bitter because she sold her soul to a restaurant. Volunteering is for charities, not your actual job. Good job standing your ground. I wish I was like that when I was 16. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.